Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, the realtor told me the attic was just storage, nothing worth checking out. For weeks I believed that. I didn't even open the hatch. Then I noticed the dust shifting up there, tiny tracks like someone crawling. I pulled down the ladder one night and climbed up with a flashlight. What I found wasn't boxes or insulation. It was a sleeping bag, a pile of canned food, and a phone with hundreds of videos, none taken by me. The angles were from inside my home, behind vents. Beneath furniture, some were filmed while I was in the shower. I wasn't living alone, and I never had been. The phone felt heavier than it should have in my trembling hands. The battery was nearly dead, but I managed to scroll through the video library before it went black. Each thumbnail showed my own face, my own movements, captured from impossible angles. I recognized my kitchen counter from below, my bedroom ceiling from above, my bathroom mirror from a corner I couldn't even see. Someone had been documenting my entire existence without me knowing. I descended the ladder slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. The house I'd called home for 3 months suddenly felt foreign. Every shadow seemed deeper, every creak more deliberate. I walked through each room with new eyes, searching for the hidden cameras I now knew existed. Behind the bathroom vent, I found the first one. A tiny lens, no bigger than a button, perfectly positioned to capture everything. The living room held 2 more, one embedded in the smoke detector, another tucked behind a picture frame that had supposedly come with the house. My bedroom revealed the most disturbing discovery yet, a device mounted inside the ceiling fan, rotating slowly to capture every angle of my most private moments. The violation felt absolute, complete. I called the police, but explaining the situation proved more complicated than I'd anticipated. The officer who responded seemed skeptical when I mentioned the attic dweller. He climbed up himself, flashlight in hand, but found nothing. The sleeping bag was gone. The canned food had vanished. Even the phone had disappeared, leaving behind only the faint impression of where it had been pressed against the insulation. "Are you sure about what you saw?" he asked, his tone suggesting he wasn't entirely convinced. I showed him the cameras I discovered, but they too had been removed. Clean holes in the walls where they'd been mounted, but no evidence of the devices themselves. The officer took notes, but I could see the doubt growing in his expression with each missing piece of proof. After he left, I sat in my kitchen trying to make sense of what had happened. Either someone had been living in my attic and watching me for months, only to vanish completely within the span of an hour, or I was losing my mind. Neither option felt particularly comforting. The next morning brought a visit from my landlord, a middle-aged woman who'd inherited the property from her father. She seemed genuinely concerned when I explained the situation, but her reaction struck me as odd. She kept touching her neck while I spoke, a nervous gesture that made me wonder what she wasn't telling me. "Has anyone else ever mentioned problems with this house?" I asked. Her hand moved to her throat again. The previous tenant left suddenly, middle of a lease, never gave a reason. She provided me with his forwarding address, though she warned me he might not want to discuss his time here. I found him working at a hardware store across town, a quiet man with tired eyes who seemed to recognize something in my expression before I even spoke. "You found them too," he said simply. We talked for nearly an hour. His experience mirrored mine almost exactly. The sounds from above, the discovery of the makeshift living space, the hidden cameras throughout the house. But when he tried to document everything, the evidence had vanished just as completely as mine had. "I think someone's been using that house for years," he told me, "coming and going as they please. The landlord's father built it in the 70s. Lot of hidden spaces, lot of ways in and out that aren't on any blueprint." He'd done some research after moving out, he said. The house had a history of short-term tenants, people who rarely stayed longer than 6 months. Most left without explanation, forfeiting security deposits rather than completing their leases. I pressed him for more details, but he seemed reluctant to continue. Finally, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "I think they know when you're getting close to figuring it out," he said. "That's when they clean up and disappear, until the next tenant moves in." The implication settled over me like cold water. Someone had been watching me, studying my routines, learning my habits. They'd known exactly when I was likely to discover their presence, and they'd prepared accordingly. But who were they, and why my house specifically? I returned home that evening with a new sense of purpose. If someone was using my house as their personal surveillance laboratory, there had to be evidence somewhere. I started in the basement, examining every pipe, every joint, every corner where someone might hide equipment or create secret access points. Behind the water heater, I found something the cleanup crew had missed. A small notebook, water damaged but still partially readable. The pages contained dates, times, and what appeared to be behavioral observations. My behavioral observations. Subject rises early, usually before sunrise, prefers coffee black, showers at night, not morning, checks locks twice before bed. The entries went back months, starting from before I'd even moved in. Someone had been preparing for my arrival. The final entry, dated just days earlier, made my hands shake as I read it. Subject becoming suspicious. Noticed dust patterns. Time to relocate operation. I photographed every page before the ink could fade further, but even as I did, I wondered if it would matter. If this person or persons had been operating successfully for years, they clearly knew how to avoid consequences. How many other tenants had found similar evidence, only to have it disappear or be dismissed? The phone calls started that night. No voice on the other end, just breathing and the faint sound of movement. When I tried calling back, the number was always disconnected. I changed my locks, installed new security systems, even had a friend stay over for several nights. But the feeling of being watched never left. 3 weeks later, I found another phone hidden in my kitchen cabinet. This one contained newer videos, footage taken since my discovery in the attic. Someone had been in my house again, replacing the cameras I'd found, continuing their documentation of my life. The violation felt endless, inescapable. I moved out the following month, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was simply passing the problem to the next person. Someone else would rent that house, discover the same signs, find the same evidence, and face the same disappearing act. The cycle would continue because no one in authority seemed capable of believing it was real. The landlord accepted my early departure without argument, which should have been a relief, but instead felt like confirmation. She'd been through this before. She knew exactly what was happening in her property, and she'd chosen to look the other way rather than confront it. I drive past that house sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep. There's always a light on in one of the windows, always a car in the driveway. New tenants, unaware of what they've inherited. I wonder how long it will take them to notice the dust patterns in the attic, to hear the sounds that don't belong. Part of me wants to warn them, to knock on their door and explain what they're really dealing with, but I know how that conversation would go. They'd look at me the same way that police officer looked at me, with polite skepticism and growing concern for my mental state. The truth is, I never found out who was living in my attic or why they chose my house. I never learned how they gained access or where they went when they vanished. All I know is that somewhere out there, someone has hundreds of hours of footage documenting my most private moments, and there's nothing I can do about it. Sometimes I wonder if they're still watching me in whatever new place I've found. The thought makes me check my vents more often than I should, examine my smoke detectors with unnecessary scrutiny. Trust, once broken so completely, doesn't easily repair itself. The scariest part isn't that someone violated my privacy or invaded my home. It's that they were so good at it, so practiced and efficient, that they'd clearly done it many times before. And they're probably doing it again right now to someone else who hasn't yet noticed the dust shifting in their attic. Crime 2, it was plugged into my wall when I came back from a weekend trip. I live alone. I don't even own that brand of charger. I thought maybe I left my door unlocked and someone used my apartment, but nothing else was out of place. Nothing was missing. I should have ignored it, thrown it away. Instead, I plugged it into my laptop. Hidden in the device was a micro SD card. It contained hundreds of photos of me, at home, at work, in bed. Someone wasn't just charging their phone, they were charging it while watching me. The photos were organized by date. The oldest one was from 3 months ago. I was brushing my teeth, completely unaware that somewhere in my bathroom a camera was recording. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through folder after folder. Me cooking dinner, me on the phone with my sister, me sleeping. The metadata showed the photos were taken from different angles, different rooms. This wasn't a one-time break-in. Someone had been inside my home repeatedly, systematically documenting my life. I called the building manager first. He arrived within the hour, a man I'd spoken to maybe twice since moving in. His name tag read supervisor, and he kept adjusting his glasses while I explained the situation. He seemed genuinely shocked, but there was something in the way he avoided looking directly at the laptop screen that made my stomach clench. He mentioned that maintenance had been in and out of apartments recently, checking smoke detectors and water pressure. But he couldn't remember exactly which days or which units. The building had security cameras in the hallways, but when we checked the footage, there were gaps, convenient gaps. The manager explained that the system sometimes malfunctioned, especially during the maintenance period. He promised to get me copies of what existed, but warned that the quality wasn't great. His hands were sweating when he handed me his business card, and I noticed a small bandage on his thumb that hadn't been there when he first arrived. I spent that evening examining every inch of my apartment. Behind my bedroom mirror, I found a tiny hole that had been drilled and carefully concealed. The hole was just wide enough for a camera lens. In my living room, a seemingly innocent air freshener had been modified with a small recording device. The craftsmanship was professional, deliberate. This wasn't the work of an opportunist. Someone had planned this carefully, executed it with precision. The police detective assigned to my case had tired eyes and coffee stains on his shirt. He took notes while I showed him the photos, but his pen barely moved across the page. He asked if I had any enemies, any ex-boyfriends, anyone who might want to hurt me. The questions felt routine, like he'd asked them 1,000 times before. When I mentioned the building manager's reaction, he wrote down a phone number and promised to follow up. But something in his tone suggested he'd already decided this case would end up in a filing cabinet somewhere. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The woman in apartment 3B always seemed to know when I was coming or going. She'd appear in the hallway at the exact moment I stepped out of the elevator, making small talk about my schedule. The maintenance worker who'd fixed my sink last month had lingered longer than necessary, asking questions about my work, my travel plans. Even my neighbor across the hall had developed a habit of opening his door whenever I opened mine, as if he were listening for the sound of my key in the lock. The building manager called 2 days later with an update on the security footage. His voice sounded different over the phone, more controlled. He'd found some clips that might be relevant, but suggested we meet in person to review them. When I arrived at his office, the footage quality was exactly as poor as he'd promised. Grainy shapes moved through hallways, but faces were indistinguishable. However, in one clip, a figure was carrying something that looked suspiciously like the charger I'd found. The timestamp showed it was recorded the day before I returned from my trip. I asked to see the maintenance logs for my floor. The manager's hesitation was barely noticeable, but it was there. He pulled out a thick binder and flipped through pages covered in handwritten entries. According to the records, no maintenance work had been scheduled for my apartment in the past 3 months, but there were several entries for emergency repairs that had been completed without tenant notification. The handwriting changed between entries, as if different people had made the notes at different times. That evening I decided to test something. I left my apartment and waited in the parking garage, watching the building entrance through my car windows. Within 20 minutes, I saw the maintenance worker entering through the side entrance, the one supposedly reserved for emergencies. He was carrying a small toolbox and had keys that opened the main door without any buzzing or approval from the front desk. I followed him upstairs, staying far enough behind to remain unnoticed. He went directly to my floor and stopped at my door. The sound of metal against metal echoed through the hallway as he worked on my lock. I had changed the locks after finding the charger, but somehow he still had access. I recorded everything on my phone, my breathing barely audible even to myself. When he finished and disappeared down the stairwell, I waited 10 more minutes before approaching my door. Fresh scratches marked the new lock, and inside my apartment, I could smell his cologne lingering near the bathroom mirror. I confronted the building manager the next morning with the video evidence. His reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of shock or concern, he became defensive, asking why I'd been spying on the building staff. He claimed the maintenance worker had legitimate access to all units for safety inspections, even though no such inspections had been mentioned in my lease agreement. When I pressed him about the modified air freshener and the hidden camera equipment, he suggested I might be imagining things, that stress could make people see patterns that weren't really there. The detective finally returned my call after I'd left 3 voicemails. He'd spoken with the building management company, and they'd assured him that all maintenance procedures were standard and legal. The photos on the memory card were concerning, but without clear evidence of who had taken them, there wasn't much the police could do. He recommended I consider moving to a different building, maybe somewhere with better security. The case would remain open, but realistically, these types of investigations rarely led to arrests. I started noticing things about my daily routine that I'd never questioned before. My coffee shop barista always had my order ready before I reached the counter, even though I'd never been a regular customer with a predictable schedule. The grocery store clerk in the express lane seemed to know which checkout I'd choose, opening his register just as I approached. Even my hairdresser mentioned details about my weekend plans that I was certain I'd never shared with her. The more I examined these interactions, the more they felt orchestrated. Someone had been studying my patterns, my preferences, my habits. They knew me better than I knew myself, and they'd built an entire network of information around my life. The charger wasn't just a device for watching me, it was a tool for controlling me, for making me feel observed and vulnerable even when I thought I was alone. I moved out of the apartment 2 weeks later, but the feeling of being watched followed me. In my new place, I check every electrical outlet, every smoke detector, every corner where a camera might hide. I've changed my routine completely, taking different routes to work, shopping at different stores, even changing my hair. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I still wonder if I'm truly alone or if someone, somewhere, is still watching, still documenting, still collecting pieces of my life that I never agreed to share. The charger sits in an evidence bag somewhere in a police station, along with the memory card and all those photos of me. The case remains open but inactive, a file number in a system that has already moved on to other crimes, other victims. And I still don't know who was behind it all, whether it was the building manager, the maintenance worker, or someone else entirely. Someone who might still have copies of those photos, who might still be watching from a new angle, through a new device, waiting for the right moment to plug in somewhere else. Crime 3, he always claimed the padlock was broken, said he'd fix it eventually. I never cared until the smell drifted into my yard, rotting meat, chemical bite. One night I peeked through the crack in the wood. I saw a single shoe, adult-sized, stained dark. That same night I waited for him to leave and snuck inside. The floor creaked under a tarp. Beneath it were several shallow pits, some filled in, some waiting. And near the corner a stack of photos wrapped in twine, all of the same person, me. I backed out of that shed with my hands shaking, the images burned into my retinas like a camera flash. The photos were crisp, recent, me walking to my car, me watering my plants, me through my bedroom window, sleeping. How long had he been watching? The stack was thick, bound tight with that rough brown twine that left fiber burns on my fingertips when I touched it. The next morning I watched him from my kitchen window as he tended his garden. Same routine as always, coffee mug in one hand, garden hose in the other. His movements were deliberate, methodical. The way he watered each plant in a perfect grid pattern. The way he checked the soil with his index finger, pressing down exactly 2 knuckles deep. I had watched this routine for 3 years, found it oddly comforting. Now it felt choreographed, rehearsed. I started keeping a journal documenting his patterns. He left for work every weekday, returned at the same hour. Saturday mornings were for yard work. Sunday afternoons he disappeared inside his house and I wouldn't see him until Monday. But there were gaps I had never noticed before, midweek absences that lasted well into the night. The shed door would hang open during these times, and I could see him moving around inside with a flashlight, organizing something. The smell persisted. My other neighbors complained to the homeowners association about a possible gas leak or sewage problem. Environmental services came out twice, found nothing. The inspector was a tired-looking woman with permanent marker ink on her fingers. She walked the perimeter of his property, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. When she reached the shed, she paused, her pen hovering over her clipboard. She made a note, circled it twice, then moved on without saying anything. I began researching missing persons reports online, scrolling through faces that could belong to anyone. The photos all looked the same after a while. Desperate families holding up pictures at press conferences, empty bedrooms with perfectly made beds, but none of the faces matched the shoe I had seen, which was ridiculous because you cannot identify someone by their footwear. Still, I kept looking, kept clicking through endless galleries of the vanished. His garbage days became my obsession. I would wake before dawn, watching from my darkened living room as he wheeled his bins to the curb. Always 2 bags, never more, never less, always tied with the same knots. I started taking pictures of his trash, standing at my window with my phone pressed against the glass. The images were blurry, useless, but I kept taking them anyway. One evening I found him standing in my backyard, just standing there looking at my tomato plants. When I tapped on the window, he turned and waved as if this were perfectly normal behavior. His smile was the same friendly expression he had worn for 3 years, but now it seemed painted on, too wide for his face. I called the police non-emergency line, described what I had seen in the shed. The officer on the phone sounded bored, asked if I had witnessed any actual crime being committed. When I mentioned the photographs, he asked if I had taken them with me as evidence. I had not. He suggested I speak with my neighbor directly about my concerns, recommended a community mediation service. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. That night I dreamed about the pits. In the dream they were perfectly round, like moon craters, and I was standing at the edge of one looking down. The bottom was too dark to see, but I could hear movement down there, a scratching sound like fingernails on wood. When I woke up, my sheets were soaked with sweat, and I could still smell that chemical bite in the air. I started varying my routines, taking different routes to work, parking in different spots, but the feeling of being watched persisted. At the grocery store, I would catch glimpses of familiar clothing in my peripheral vision. The same blue jacket I had seen him wearing, the same canvas work boots, but when I turned to look directly, there was never anyone there. His shed stayed unlocked. Every night I could see it from my bedroom window, that door hanging slightly ajar like a mouth breathing. Sometimes I would see a faint light moving around inside, but by the time I got my binoculars, it would be gone. I bought a security camera, mounted it facing his property, but the angle was wrong, and all I could capture were shadows and tree branches swaying in the wind. The photos haunted me most, the way they were organized, chronological, like a timeline of my life that I had never consented to. Some were taken from inside my house, angles that should have been impossible unless he had been inside when I was not home. I changed my locks, installed a security system, but the feeling of violation remained. I began to wonder if I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe the smell was coming from somewhere else. Maybe the shoe belonged to him, left there innocently while he worked. Maybe the photos were of someone else entirely, someone who just happened to look like me from a distance. Memory is unreliable, especially when fear is involved. The mind creates patterns where none exist, sees threats in everyday occurrences. But then I found the second set of photos tucked under my windshield wipers one morning. These were different, closer, more intimate, me sleeping, me showering, me crying over a phone call from my mother. The paper was still warm from the printer. I never confronted him about what I had seen, never called the police again, never mentioned it to anyone, because deep down I began to suspect that the real question was not what he was hiding in that shed, but what he already knew about me that I had forgotten. What I might have done to deserve this level of attention, what I might have done to end up in those photographs in the first place. The shed remains unlocked. The smell has faded, or perhaps I have simply grown accustomed to it. He still waves when he sees me, still tends his garden with mechanical precision. And I still watch him from my window, uncertain whether I am the observer or the observed, whether I am documenting evidence or simply feeding an obsession that was never really mine to begin with. Crime 4, there was no return address, just my name handwritten. Inside the cardboard box was a sealed plastic bag containing a wallet, a set of keys, and a crumpled photograph. I didn't recognize the man in the picture, but the location behind him was unmistakable, my living room. I showed it to the police. They asked me why my fingerprints were on the wallet. I didn't have an answer. The package kept me awake at night. And when I finally looked in the crawl space under my house, I understood exactly why they sent it to me. It wasn't the wrong address after all. The detective's eyes had that hollow look I'd seen on television. She asked me to walk through the sequence of events again, slower this time. I told her about the delivery truck that came while I was at work, about the neighbor who signed for the package, about finding it on my doorstep when I returned home. The cardboard was damp from morning dew, corners softened like it had been sitting there for hours. "Take me through opening it," she said, her pen hovering over a yellow notepad. I remembered the sound of the tape pulling away from the cardboard, that sharp ripping noise that seemed too loud in my quiet kitchen. The plastic bag inside was thick, the kind used for evidence. The wallet was brown leather, worn at the edges. The keys were ordinary house keys on a plain metal ring, but the photograph stopped me cold. The man was middle-aged, unremarkable except for the way he stood in my living room like he belonged there. Behind him I could see my bookshelf, my lamp, the corner of my couch. "Did you touch anything else in the bag?" the detective asked. I shook my head, but my hands remembered the weight of the wallet, the way the leather felt warm against my palm before I realized what I was holding. The detective made a note. She told me they'd found my fingerprints on the wallet, clear as day. She asked if I'd ever seen the man before. I stared at the photograph until my eyes watered, searching for some flicker of recognition, but his face remained that of a stranger. The investigation moved forward without me, but the questions followed me home. I found myself studying every corner of my living room, trying to understand when that photograph was taken. The angle suggested someone standing near my front window. The lighting looked like afternoon sun. I checked my work schedule, my calendar, trying to find gaps where someone could have been in my house with this man. Nothing made sense. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie in bed listening to the house settle, wondering if those creaking sounds were just wood expanding or footsteps I'd never noticed before. The smell of my own home started feeling foreign, like walking into a hotel room that almost resembles your bedroom but not quite. I found myself sniffing the air, searching for traces of cologne or cigarettes or anything that didn't belong. The detective called to tell me they'd identified the man in the photograph. He'd been reported missing 3 weeks before the package arrived. His wife said he'd gone to meet someone about a job, left the house in the afternoon, and never came back. His car was found in a parking garage downtown, keys gone, wallet gone. The detective's voice carried a weight I didn't want to understand. "We need to search your property," she said. I gave them permission because refusing would have looked suspicious, but my hands shook as I signed the consent form. They brought dogs and metal detectors and men with shovels. They combed through my basement, my garage, my yard. They found nothing unusual until they reached the crawl space under my house. I watched from my kitchen window as they emerged with evidence bags. One contained a cell phone. Another held what looked like a piece of fabric. The detective knocked on my door and asked me to come outside. Her expression had changed. The hollow look was gone, replaced by something sharper. "When was the last time you went under your house?" she asked. I told her I'd never been down there. The crawl space was accessed through a small door in my basement that I'd always assumed led to plumbing or electrical equipment. It was narrow, dark, not somewhere I'd ever thought to explore. But as I stood there watching the investigation unfold, I remembered something that made my stomach turn. The house had belonged to my uncle before he died and left it to me. He'd lived here alone for years, rarely had visitors, kept to himself. When I inherited the property, I'd moved in without really exploring every corner. The basement had always felt cold, even in summer. Sometimes I'd catch a smell down there, musty and sweet, that I'd attributed to old wood and poor ventilation. The detective showed me photographs of what they'd found. The cell phone belonged to the missing man. The fabric appeared to be from his jacket, the same one he was wearing in the photograph found in the package. There were other items too, personal effects that painted a picture I didn't want to see. "Your uncle," the detective said, "tell me about him." I realized how little I actually knew. He'd been my father's brother, quiet, never married, worked in maintenance somewhere. He'd sent birthday cards but rarely visited. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, I'd inherited this house and felt grateful for the unexpected stability it provided. I'd never questioned why he'd left it to me instead of other relatives. I'd never wondered about his life here, his habits, his secrets. The investigation revealed that the missing man had responded to a job listing, something about handyman work. The phone number on the listing traced back to a line that had been disconnected shortly after my uncle's death. Security cameras from nearby businesses showed the man's car following a route that led directly to this address. The timeline placed his disappearance just days after I'd moved in, while I was still unpacking boxes and learning the quirks of my new home. The detective asked me about the package again. Who knew my address, who had my name written in that careful handwriting. The plastic bag inside suggested someone with knowledge of evidence handling, someone who understood the importance of preserving fingerprints and DNA. The photograph suggested someone who'd been inside my house, who knew exactly how to frame the scene. I started remembering things differently. The neighbor who'd signed for the package described the delivery person as average height, wearing a uniform, nothing memorable. But when pressed for details, she admitted she'd only seen them from behind, loading empty boxes back into the truck. The handwriting on the package was careful, practiced, like someone accustomed to filling out forms or reports. The missing man's wife provided more details about the job listing her husband had answered. It promised good pay for simple maintenance work, mentioned the need for discretion due to the homeowner's privacy concerns. The listing had been posted on multiple websites, always from different email addresses that led nowhere. Someone had been very careful about covering their tracks. As the investigation continued, I found myself studying my uncle's belongings with new eyes. He'd left behind boxes of paperwork, old photographs, receipts, and documents that I'd stored in the basement without examining closely. I started going through them methodically, looking for patterns or connections I'd missed. The photographs were the most disturbing. My uncle had documented his life here meticulously, taking pictures of home improvement projects, seasonal changes in the yard, even mundane daily activities. But scattered among the innocent images were photographs that felt different. Pictures of the street outside, of neighbors, of delivery trucks and service vehicles, always taken from inside the house through windows like surveillance. One photograph stopped me completely. It showed the interior of the crawl space under the house, but it was clean, empty, recently constructed. The wooden framework looked new, the insulation bright white. My uncle had taken this picture to document his work, but the care with which the space had been prepared suggested a purpose I didn't want to consider. The detective found more evidence of planning. My uncle had researched missing persons cases, printed articles about unsolved disappearances, kept files organized by date and location. His computer history revealed searches for information about body decomposition, soil composition, construction techniques for concealed spaces. The pattern painted a picture of someone who'd been preparing for years. But the package remained the central mystery. If my uncle was responsible for what happened in the crawl space, who had sent me the evidence, who had access to the victim's belongings after the crime was committed, the fingerprints on the wallet were mine, but I had no memory of touching it before opening the package. The photograph showed the victim in my living room, but I'd never seen him before. The detective presented a theory that made my blood run cold. The evidence suggested my uncle hadn't worked alone. The careful preservation of the victim's belongings, the strategic timing of the package delivery, the intimate knowledge of my movements and schedule, someone else had been involved, someone who was still alive, still watching. The package wasn't meant to frame you, the detective explained. It was meant to recruit you. The handwriting analysis came back inconclusive. The delivery company had no record of the package in their system. The neighbor's description of the delivery person matched thousands of people in the area. Whoever had sent the package understood how to avoid detection, how to manipulate the system, how to make evidence appear and disappear. I realized that moving into my uncle's house hadn't been the blessing I'd thought. It had been an inheritance of something much darker. The crawl space had been prepared, the surveillance system established, the methods perfected. My uncle's death had created a vacancy in whatever operation he'd been running, and someone wanted me to fill it. The investigation continues, but I've stopped expecting answers. I've moved out of the house, but I can't escape the feeling that I'm still being watched, still being evaluated. Sometimes I receive packages with no return address, though I never open them anymore. The detective says they're monitoring my mail, but somehow the packages always arrive when no one is looking. I understand now that the truth isn't something you discover, it's something that finds you when you're ready to handle it. And I'm not sure I'll ever be ready to handle what my uncle left behind, what someone wanted me to become, what that photograph really means. The man in the picture is still missing. His wife still waits for answers. And somewhere, someone is still sending packages, still looking for the right person to continue what my uncle started. The package wasn't sent to the wrong address after all. It was sent to exactly the right person, at exactly the right moment, by someone who knew I'd be curious enough to look in the crawl space, frightened enough to call the police, and isolated enough to understand that some family legacies can't be escaped. I just don't know yet whether I'm the next victim or the next perpetrator. Crime 5, I moved the rug to vacuum and saw the outline, barely visible, dusty and worn. A latch, rusted but intact. Curiosity got the better of me. The trapdoor creaked open to a steep staircase that descended into darkness. I brought a flashlight. At the bottom there was a room no one told me about. Cement walls, chains bolted to the floor, and a stained mattress in the corner. In the center sat a box. Inside were notebooks, drawings, and recordings. All of them described what had happened in that room, and one note at the top simply said, "Finish what was started." The house was supposed to be my fresh start. The previous owner had left suddenly, the realtor mentioned. Estate sale, family complications, nothing unusual. But standing in that basement room, I realized how wrong I was. The notebooks were filled with meticulous handwriting, different pens, different pressures, as if written during various emotional states. The first entry was dated several months back. It described the construction of the room, the careful soundproofing, the placement of each bolt in the concrete. The writer seemed proud of their work, detailing measurements and materials with unsettling precision. I flipped through page after page. The entries became more personal, more disturbing. They documented interactions with people who had been brought to this room. The writer never used names, referring to them only as numbers or brief descriptions. A woman with a birthmark, a man who spoke with an accent, a teenager who wouldn't stop crying. My hands trembled as I read. The descriptions were clinical, methodical. There was no emotion in the words, just facts recorded like a scientific experiment. The writer documented everything: reactions, responses, duration of stay. Some entries ended with the phrase, "relocated successfully." Others simply stopped mid-sentence. The drawings were worse, detailed sketches of the room from different angles, diagrams showing the positioning of restraints, floor plans with measurements and notations. One drawing showed the view from upstairs, my living room sketched from memory, with an X marking where the rug would be placed. I picked up the first recording device. It was an old digital recorder, the kind used for interviews. My finger hovered over the play button. The silence in the basement felt suffocating. When I finally pressed it, a voice filled the space, calm, measured, almost therapeutic in tone. Day one of the new arrangement. The subject was cooperative during transport, minimal resistance upon arrival. The room functions as designed. Soundproofing appears adequate. No external noise penetration detected. I stopped the recording. The voice was unfamiliar, but something about its cadence made my skin crawl. Professional, detached, like a doctor dictating notes. I tried another recording, this one from a different date based on the file name. Subject displays signs of psychological adaptation. Stockholm Syndrome developing as anticipated. The conditioning process proceeds ahead of schedule. Note: increase nutritional intake to maintain optimal health parameters. The recordings went on for hours, dozens of files, each documenting different aspects of what had happened in this room. Some included background sounds, muffled crying, shuffling, whispered pleas, but the narrator's voice never changed, never showed emotion or hesitation. I found myself climbing back upstairs frequently, needing air, needing to see sunlight. Each time I returned, I promised myself I would stop, would call the authorities, would walk away, but something kept pulling me back to that box. Among the later notebooks, the handwriting began to change. The clinical detachment gave way to something more personal, more conflicted. Entries became shorter, more erratic. The writer seemed to be struggling with doubts. The process is taking longer than expected. Subject resistance remains high despite extended conditioning. Perhaps the environment needs adjustment. Perhaps the subject is unsuitable for the program. Then entries about cleaning, about removal, about preparing the space for future use. The writer described dismantling equipment, scrubbing surfaces, eliminating evidence. They wrote about learning from mistakes, about improving the process for next time. The final entry was different. The handwriting was hurried, less controlled. They're getting close. The investigation has expanded beyond what was expected. Time to relocate. The new owner will be arriving soon. Perhaps they will understand the work better than I did. Perhaps they will have the dedication I lacked. The room is ready. The materials are prepared. The process can continue. That's when I found the folder marked with my name. Inside were photographs of me, pictures taken through windows from across the street in parking lots, images of me signing papers at the real estate office, moving boxes into the house, living my normal life while being watched. The photos were arranged chronologically, documenting weeks of surveillance before I even knew this house existed. Beneath the photos was a typed letter, no signature, no identifying information. The work requires dedication and patience. The previous occupant lacked both. The selection process for the new caretaker was extensive. Your psychological profile suggests better suitability for the role. The room is operational. The supply chain remains intact. The subjects are pre-selected and ready for transport. Continuation of the program is essential. Do not disappoint. I sat in that basement for what felt like hours, staring at those photos, reading that letter over and over. The implications were clear, but my mind refused to accept them. This wasn't random. My purchase of this house, my discovery of the room, even my reaction to the contents, all of it had been anticipated, planned. I checked the recent notebook entries again. The dates aligned with my move-in date. Someone had been watching, waiting to see if I would find the room, if I would understand the message. The note about finishing what was started wasn't just an instruction, it was an expectation. I climbed back upstairs and looked at my living room with new eyes. The furniture placement, the rug's position, even the vacuum I had used, everything suddenly felt deliberate, staged. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but stopped. What would I tell them? That I found evidence of crimes in my basement, that someone had been watching me, that I might be expected to continue something I didn't understand. The recordings had mentioned transportation, supply chains, subject selection. Somewhere people were being chosen, prepared, delivered. The system was still operating, and according to the letter, I was supposed to be its new operator. I walked to the window and looked outside. The street appeared normal, suburban, safe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, evaluated, tested. Had I passed by taking the materials upstairs, failed by not calling the police immediately? Or was my paralysis exactly what they expected? The box was still downstairs, along with everything else. The room was intact, functional, waiting. I had a choice to make, but I realized I didn't fully understand what that choice was. The previous owner had left, but they had also left instructions. They had prepared everything for continuation. As darkness settled over the house, I found myself listening for sounds I couldn't identify. Footsteps that might not be mine, cars that lingered too long on the street, phone calls that ended when I answered. The feeling of being part of something larger than myself, something that had been operating long before I arrived and would continue long after I left. I still have the key to the trapdoor. I still have the recordings, the notebooks, the photographs. Sometimes I go downstairs just to look at the room to remind myself it's real. The chains are still there, polished clean. The mattress has been replaced with a fresh one. Someone has been maintaining the space. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the floorboards creak upstairs when I'm certain I'm alone in the basement. As if someone else has discovered the rug, has found the latch, has started their own descent into understanding. The letter mentioned disappointment, but it also mentioned continuation. I keep wondering if my role is to participate or to prepare the way for whoever comes next, whether I'm the caretaker or just another subject in someone else's experiment. The work continues, but I'm no longer certain which side of it I'm on. Crime 6, I don't have kids, never have, but my landlord left an old baby monitor plugged into the wall when I moved in. I didn't think much of it until it clicked on by itself. No baby sounds, just static, then breathing. Rhythmic, close. I walked the house and found nothing, but each night it turned on again. One time it played a recording, a whisper, my name. I took it apart and found something worse inside, a transmitter. Someone was using it to listen. And when I traced the signal, it didn't come from outside the house. It came from inside the crawl space. The crawl space access was behind the water heater in the basement. The wooden panel had been painted over so many times that the edges were rounded, but underneath the paint I could see scratches, fresh ones. The wood around the screws was lighter, cleaner than the rest. Someone had been down there recently. I called my landlord first. He sounded confused, distracted, said he'd never owned a baby monitor, didn't know where it came from. His voice had that quality people get when they're trying to remember something that doesn't want to be remembered. He mentioned the previous tenant had been a young woman, single, kept to herself, left suddenly without giving notice. The real estate agent who handled the rental gave me more details. The woman had paid 6 months in advance, then disappeared overnight, left everything behind, furniture, clothes, personal items. The landlord had waited the legal amount of time before clearing out her belongings. Most went to charity, but some things were stored in the basement. Maybe that's where the monitor came from, the agent suggested. A reasonable explanation that felt wrong in every way. I started checking the other electronic devices in the house. The smoke detectors were newer than they should have been. The thermostat had a small antenna I'd never noticed. Even the cable box had extra ports that didn't connect to anything visible. The house was wired for surveillance, but not by professionals. This was improvised, hidden, personal. The breathing on the monitor continued every night, always the same rhythm, like someone sleeping deeply. But sometimes there were other sounds, shuffling like fabric against wood. The whisper of my name came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, tired, desperate. She said my name like she knew me, like she'd been waiting for me. I found the previous tenant's social media accounts. Her photos showed a cheerful woman in her 20s, always smiling, always surrounded by friends. But the posts became stranger in the weeks before she vanished. She wrote about feeling watched, about sounds in the walls, about dreams where she couldn't wake up. Her friends commented with concern, but she brushed off their questions. The last post was a single word, finally. The police report was thin, no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Her car was found at a bus station across town. Security cameras showed her getting on a bus, but the footage was grainy, unclear. The investigating officer noted that she seemed calm, purposeful, like someone who had made a decision and was following through. But I kept thinking about that word, finally. Finally what? Finally leaving, finally understanding something, finally giving up. I went back to the crawl space with a flashlight and a screwdriver. The space was narrow, dirty, filled with pipes and electrical conduits. But in the far corner behind the main support beam, I found something that made my hands shake. A sleeping bag still laid out, a pillow indented with the shape of a head, empty water bottles, snack wrappers, a portable radio tuned to static. Someone had been living down there, listening, watching. The transmitter in the baby monitor wasn't just for surveillance, it was for communication. The breathing, the whispers, they weren't recordings, they were live. I called the police, but what could I tell them? That someone might have been hiding in my crawl space, that a missing woman might still be alive. The evidence was circumstantial, strange, but not criminal. The sleeping bag could have been left by anyone. The modified electronics could have been installed by a paranoid previous tenant. The detective who came to the house was polite but skeptical. She took notes, photographed the crawl space, collected the baby monitor. But I could see in her expression that she thought I was either paranoid or seeking attention. She mentioned that missing persons cases were complicated, that people had the right to disappear if they wanted to. Sometimes the best thing to do was let them go. That night the house was quiet for the first time since I'd moved in. No static, no breathing, no whispers. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt watched. The silence was worse than the sounds. It felt like someone holding their breath, waiting. I started researching the house's history. Built in the 60s, it had changed hands frequently. Most tenants stayed less than a year. The reasons varied: job relocations, family changes, better opportunities. But the timing was consistent. People left suddenly, without much explanation. The pattern went back decades. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired postal worker who had delivered mail to the house for 20 years. He remembered the previous tenant well. She had been receiving packages addressed to different names. Always electronic equipment, always small enough to fit through the mail slot. When I showed him the modified devices I'd found, he nodded grimly. He'd seen similar setups before, usually in domestic surveillance cases. But this wasn't domestic. This was something else entirely. Someone had been using the house as a testing ground, a laboratory for observing human behavior under stress. The pattern of short-term tenants, the sophisticated but hidden surveillance equipment, the way people left suddenly, it all pointed to something deliberate, systematic. I started sleeping elsewhere, staying with friends, working late at the office. But I kept the lease, kept paying rent. I wanted to understand what had happened to the woman who lived there before me. I wanted to know who had been watching from the crawl space and why. The answer came from an unexpected place. Going through old mail that had been forwarded incorrectly, I found a letter addressed to the previous tenant. Inside was a check for a significant amount of money, issued by a research firm I'd never heard of. The memo line read, "Behavioral Study Compensation, Final Payment." The research firm's website was professional but vague. They specialized in environmental psychology and residential behavioral analysis. Their client list included government agencies, tech companies, and academic institutions. When I called, they claimed no knowledge of any study involving the house or the missing tenant. But the check was real. The money had been deposited into her account just days before she disappeared. The bank records, which I obtained through a private investigator, showed a pattern of regular payments over several months. She had been paid to live in the house, to be observed, to play the role of an unwitting test subject. The final piece came from the crawl space itself. Hidden behind insulation, I found a notebook. Pages of handwritten observations, detailed notes about sleeping patterns, daily routines, stress responses. The handwriting was careful, scientific, completely impersonal, but the last entry was different, personal, guilty. Subject has become aware of surveillance, exhibiting signs of severe psychological distress, recommending immediate termination of study. Cannot continue to observe deterioration without intervention. This was supposed to be benign behavioral research. It has become something else. The entry was signed with initials I didn't recognize, but attached to the notebook was a photograph, the missing tenant, but not alone. She was standing next to a man in a lab coat, both of them smiling. The photo was taken in what looked like a university setting. On the back, someone had written, "Doctor and his favorite student." I showed the photograph to the detective, along with the notebook and the check. This time, she took it seriously. The research firm was investigated, but they had covered their tracks well. No illegal activity could be proven. The missing woman had signed consent forms, had been paid fairly for her participation. The fact that she had suffered psychological damage was unfortunate but not criminal. But the investigation revealed something else. The man in the photograph was listed as deceased, killed in a car accident just weeks after the woman's disappearance. His research notes had been destroyed in a fire that consumed his office. The only witness to what had really happened in that house was missing, and the person responsible was dead. I moved out the following week, but I kept in touch with the detective, kept checking for any news about the missing woman. Months passed without any leads. Then, almost a year after I'd left the house, I received a phone call. The voice was familiar, tired, scared. It was her. She was alive, living under a different name in a different state. She had run because she couldn't trust anyone to believe what had happened to her. The research study had been a cover for something darker. The man in the photograph hadn't been studying her behavior. He had been breaking her down systematically, methodically. The goal wasn't scientific knowledge, it was control. She never came forward officially, never pressed charges or made a formal statement. She had built a new life and was afraid to risk it. But she wanted me to know that she was okay, that she had survived, and she wanted me to know something else. The house was still being used. New tenants, new test subjects, new observers in the crawl space. The research firm might have been shut down, but the work continued. Someone else had taken over the project, learned from the previous mistakes, refined the methods. I think about that conversation often, about the choice she made to disappear rather than fight, about the house that continues to consume people, one tenant at a time. about the observers who watch from hidden spaces, taking notes on human suffering. The baby monitor is still there, I'm sure, still plugged into the wall, still picking up more than sound, still waiting for the next person to move in, to live their life unaware that every moment is being recorded, analyzed, judged. And somewhere in a crawl space or a basement or a hidden room, someone is still watching, still taking notes, still turning ordinary people into test subjects for an experiment that has no end. Crime 7, it seemed innocent, just a slip of paper under my door promising a chance to win cash for answering 10 questions. I filled it out, left it on my porch, and forgot about it. Then the letters started arriving. Not prizes, instructions, step-by-step actions, one per day. At first it was minor, walk your dog down a new street. Then it escalated. Leave your door unlocked, don't answer your phone today. When I stopped complying, my dog vanished. I thought it was a coincidence until the final letter came. You failed the test. Time to meet the others who did too. The address led me to a basement meeting room beneath a community center. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that makes everyone look like they're dying. Folding chairs arranged in a circle. 8 people already seated when I arrived. Their faces held that same hollow expression I'd been wearing for weeks, the look of someone who'd stepped into quicksand without realizing it. The woman who seemed to be leading this gathering had perfectly manicured nails, but her cuticles were chewed raw. She spoke in a voice so calm it felt rehearsed, like she'd given this speech before, many times before. She explained how we'd all received the same survey, all made the same mistake of thinking it was harmless. The questions had seemed random: favorite color, preferred walking route, work schedule, family members, security habits. What we didn't realize was that someone had been watching, documenting, learning our patterns with surgical precision. The man sitting across from me kept checking his phone, then remembering it was dead. He'd mentioned earlier that his battery had been draining faster than usual for months. The woman next to him wore a turtleneck despite the stifling heat in the room. When she reached for her water bottle, the fabric shifted slightly, revealing what looked like finger-shaped bruises on her throat. We began sharing our stories. Each one followed the same pattern: the survey, the instructions, the escalation, the consequences of resistance. One person's elderly mother had fallen down stairs she'd climbed safely for decades. Another's teenage daughter had received explicit photos of herself taken through her bedroom window. A man's business had been vandalized repeatedly until he followed every instruction to the letter. The leader pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. Inside were copies of our surveys, but not just the ones we'd filled out. Multiple versions spanning months, earlier drafts with different questions, testing different approaches. She showed us aerial photos of our neighborhoods, detailed floor plans of our homes, psychological profiles written in clinical language that reduced us to behavioral patterns and exploitable weaknesses. Someone had been studying us long before that survey appeared under our doors. The paper had been the final step, not the first. The woman with the raw cuticles explained that she'd been part of this group for over a year. The instructions never stopped coming. They adapted, evolved, became more sophisticated. What started as psychological manipulation had graduated to something far more invasive. People in the group received assignments involving other members' families. Cross-contamination, she called it, insurance against anyone talking. I found myself studying each face in the circle, wondering which of them had been instructed to tamper with my car brakes or slip something into my coffee. The paranoia was intentional, she explained. Trust becomes impossible when everyone might be both victim and perpetrator. The folder contained more than just surveillance records. There were bank statements showing mysterious deposits in each of our accounts, small amounts, but enough to establish financial connections if anyone looked closely. Phone records of calls we'd never made to numbers we'd never seen. Email logs of messages sent from our accounts while we slept. We weren't just being controlled, we were being framed, set up. Every instruction we'd followed had created evidence of our complicity in something larger. The woman showed us photographs taken during our compliance, me leaving my door unlocked, another member walking their dog on that new street at the exact moment someone else was burglarizing a house 2 blocks away. The most disturbing part wasn't what had been done to us, it was realizing how perfectly we'd been chosen. Each person in that circle represented a different demographic, profession, social circle. Together, we formed a comprehensive cross-section of the community. Someone had been mapping social networks, identifying key nodes that could be leveraged for maximum influence. The meeting ended without resolution. No plan to go to authorities, we'd all tried that. The evidence against us was too compelling, our stories too unbelievable. The police had already been primed with selective information about each of us, painting us as unreliable witnesses with questionable motives. Walking home through familiar streets that no longer felt safe, I understood that the survey had never been about winning cash. It had been a recruitment test. We'd volunteered for something we couldn't comprehend, and now we were trapped in a system designed to sustain itself through our continued participation. The next envelope was waiting on my kitchen counter when I arrived, not under the door this time, inside the house. The message was brief: "Welcome to the program. Your first assignment begins tomorrow. Remember, your neighbors are watching." I sat in my kitchen holding that piece of paper, realizing that everything I thought I knew about choice and control had been an illusion. Somewhere in this quiet suburban neighborhood, someone was orchestrating a symphony of manipulation that turned ordinary people into unwitting accomplices in their own destruction. The survey had been just the beginning. And now, looking back at those 10 innocent questions, I could see how each answer had been a thread in a web I'd helped weave around myself. The cash prize had never existed. We were the prize. Our compliance, our fear, our silence, that was what someone had been collecting all along. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't think too hard about tomorrow's assignment." The last person who overthought things lost more than just their dog. I never found out what happened to the others in that circle. One by one, they stopped showing up to meetings. Whether they'd found a way out or simply been absorbed deeper into whatever machinery we'd stumbled into, I'll never know. What I do know is that the instructions keep coming, and each time I consider refusing, I remember that basement room and wonder which of my neighbors received a survey of their own. Crime 8, the hole wasn't there when I left for work. It was shallow, precise, and in the center was a single object, a pair of my shoes buried toe up, soles exposed. I filled it in and called animal control. They said it was probably raccoons, but the next day the hole was back, this time deeper. And in it was something worse, a lock of hair tied with twine. Not just anyone's hair, mine. I set up cameras. I thought I'd catch a person. I didn't. I caught something else. And it knew exactly what I feared. The footage showed nothing but darkness, wind moving through branches, and the faint glow of streetlights bleeding through my fence. Yet every frame felt wrong. The timestamp moved forward, but something about the shadows suggested movement where there should have been stillness. I watched it dozens of times, adjusting contrast, zooming in on every corner of the yard. The hole appeared between frames, 1 second grass, the next second earth turned over with surgical precision. I began keeping a journal documenting each incident. The third hole contained a photograph of my house taken from an angle that made no sense, too high to be from the street, too low to be from a neighboring window. The fourth held a copy of my lease agreement, pages yellowed and corners torn as if it had been buried for months. Each discovery felt like someone was reading my thoughts, anticipating my fears before I fully understood them myself. The police officer who responded to my call had tired eyes and the kind of measured patience that comes from hearing impossible stories. She walked the perimeter of my yard, taking notes on a pad that looked too small for the weight of what I was describing. When I showed her the photographs and documents, she asked about former tenants, disgruntled neighbors, anyone who might have access to personal information. Her questions were logical, methodical, but they missed the point entirely. This wasn't about access to information. Someone had been inside my life long enough to know which fears would cut deepest. I started calling previous tenants, tracking down phone numbers through old utility records and forwarded mail. The woman who lived here before me had a voice that shook when I mentioned the address. She said she'd moved out suddenly, couldn't explain why, but something about the backyard had made her feel watched. She'd found things buried too, personal items she couldn't remember losing. When I pressed for details, the line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. "You should leave," she finally said, "before it gets worse." But I couldn't leave, not just because of the lease or the money I'd put into making this place home, but because running felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to face. Instead, I dug. Every place the holes appeared, I dug deeper, looking for patterns, for answers, for anything that might explain who was doing this and why. 3 feet down in the backyard center, my shovel hit something solid. Not earth, not rock, but wood. Old wood, soft with decay. I cleared the dirt with my hands, feeling splinters embed themselves under my fingernails. It was a box, roughly the size of a shoebox, sealed with tape that had somehow survived years underground. Inside were letters addressed to me, written in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. The paper was aged, the ink faded, but the words were clear. They described my daily routines with unsettling accuracy, what I ate for breakfast, which route I took to work, how I arranged the furniture in my living room. But the dates on the letters were from before I'd moved to this house, before I'd even known this address existed. The last letter was different. The handwriting was shakier, more urgent. It apologized for what was about to happen, explaining that some patterns can't be broken, only passed along. It mentioned a previous tenant who had tried to warn them just as they were now trying to warn me. The letter ended with coordinates, numbers that, when I looked them up, pointed to a location in the backyard where I had never dug. I waited until deep night to follow those coordinates. The spot was near the back fence, hidden behind overgrown bushes that scratched at my arms as I pushed through them. The ground here felt different under my feet, softer, more recently disturbed. When I started digging, the earth gave way easily, as if it had been waiting. What I found wasn't another hole or another box. It was evidence of something else entirely. Fragments of concrete, pieces of metal, and soil that had been mixed with something darker. The smell rose up as I dug deeper, sweet and wrong, like flowers left too long in water. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone's flashlight, and in that harsh white light, I saw what I'd been trying not to see. The bones were small, delicate, arranged with the same careful precision as everything else that had been left for me to find. But these weren't meant to frighten me. They were meant to make me understand. Someone else had lived in this house, had found holes in their backyard, had received their own impossible warnings. And when they couldn't run, when they couldn't make it stop, they had become part of the pattern. I filled in the hole and went inside to pack. But as I moved through the house, gathering my things, I realized the truth that had been waiting in the shadows of my understanding. The handwriting in those letters, the one that felt familiar but strange, I knew it because I had seen it before, in mirrors, on documents, in the margins of books I'd forgotten I owned. The holes weren't being dug by someone else. They were being dug by me, during hours I couldn't remember, following impulses I couldn't explain. The previous tenant hadn't been warning me about an intruder. She'd been warning me about what this place does to people, how it turns you into the very thing you fear most. I'm writing this as the sun comes up, watching my hands move across the page with the same careful precision I've been seeing in the backyard. Tonight, I know I'll dig another hole, and I know exactly what I'll put in it, this journal, these words, everything that might warn whoever comes next. Because the pattern doesn't end, it just finds new hands to do the digging. Crime 9, clean sheets, fresh pillowcases, I'm meticulous about it. That's why it stood out, a smudge on my pillow, circular and oily. At first I thought it was mine. But when I pressed my own thumb to it, the size didn't match. It was too large. I checked the windows, the locks, the security system. Everything was untouched. That night I couldn't sleep. I flipped the pillow over. Another print, different angle, different pressure. I started checking every object in the house, every drawer. Every light switch. There were prints everywhere. None of them were mine, but all of them belonged to the same person. The discovery sent a chill through my spine that I couldn't shake off. I grabbed a magnifying glass from my desk drawer and began examining each print more carefully. The ridges were clear, distinct. Whoever left them had been deliberate, almost methodical. The prints on the kitchen counter were fresh, barely visible unless you knew where to look. The ones on my bedroom door handle were older, more pronounced. I called the security company. The system showed no breaches, no alerts, no gaps in coverage. The technician who came out was thorough but dismissive. He suggested I might be overthinking things, that maybe a cleaning service or maintenance worker had been inside without my knowledge. But I don't use cleaning services. I handle my own maintenance. I've lived alone for years, and I know every surface in this house. That evening I dusted for prints using a kit I ordered online. The results were disturbing. The intruder had touched nearly everything, my coffee mug, the remote control, even the pages of books on my nightstand. They had been reading while I slept. The thought made my skin crawl. Someone had been living parallel moments in my space, experiencing my routine, my privacy, my life. I started documenting everything. Photographs, measurements, detailed notes about where each print appeared. The pattern began to emerge. The person wasn't random. They knew my schedule. Prints appeared on weekdays, never weekends, always in rooms I used most frequently. They favored objects I touched daily, my laptop keyboard, the bathroom faucet, the handle of my favorite coffee cup. Sleep became impossible. I installed motion sensors in every room, upgraded the cameras, changed all the locks. Still, the prints appeared, fresh ones, different locations. The person was adapting, learning from my security measures. They left prints on the new locks themselves, as if mocking my attempts at protection. I reviewed months of security footage, frame by frame. Nothing, no forced entry, no shadows in windows, no suspicious activity. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Someone was inside my house regularly, intimately familiar with my belongings, my habits, my life. They knew when I showered, when I cooked, when I read. They were studying me. The breakthrough came when I found a print on something that shouldn't have been possible, the inside of my medicine cabinet mirror. To leave that mark, someone would have had to open the cabinet, touch the mirror's interior surface, and close it again. But the motion sensors would have detected that movement, unless they knew exactly how to avoid them. I began to suspect someone with access to my security system, a former employee of the installation company, perhaps, or someone who had obtained my codes. I changed everything again, new company, new equipment, new protocols. For 3 days, no new prints appeared. I allowed myself to believe the nightmare was over. Then I found prints on the replacement equipment itself, on the sensors I had just installed, on the cameras that were supposed to protect me. Whoever this was had been watching me upgrade my security, had been present during the installation, had touched the new devices before they were even activated. The realization hit me like cold water. This person wasn't breaking in. They didn't need to. They were already inside. They had been there all along, invisible, patient, meticulous. The prints weren't evidence of intrusion. They were evidence of cohabitation. I started leaving objects in specific positions, testing whether they would be moved. A book placed at a precise angle on the coffee table. A pen positioned exactly parallel to the edge of my desk. Every morning, subtle changes. The book shifted slightly. The pen rotated. Someone was living in my space, careful not to disturb too much, but unable to avoid leaving traces. The smell was next, a faint scent I couldn't identify, somewhere between soap and something metallic. It lingered in rooms after I'd been away. Strongest in my bedroom, around my dresser, where someone had been handling my clothes. The thought of unknown hands touching my personal belongings made me nauseous. I hired a private investigator. She was thorough, professional, skeptical. She examined the prints, reviewed my documentation, interviewed neighbors. Her conclusion was unsettling. The prints were too perfect, too consistent. Real break-ins leave messy evidence, scratches, damage, obvious signs of forced entry. This was different. This was intimate. She suggested something I hadn't considered. What if the person wasn't a stranger? What if they had legitimate access at some point? A former partner, a relative, someone I had trusted with keys or codes. Someone who knew my routines because they had once been part of them. I made a list of everyone who had ever had access to my house. The list was shorter than I expected, but more disturbing than I wanted to admit. Each name brought back memories, relationships, trust that had been given and perhaps betrayed. People who had shared meals at my table, slept in my bed, knew where I kept my spare keys. The investigation led to dead ends. Former partners had alibis, relatives lived too far away, friends showed no signs of obsessive behavior. Yet the prints continued. More frequent now, as if the person sensed my investigation and was becoming bolder. They left prints on my investigation notes, on the business card the private investigator had given me, on the new locks I installed weekly. One morning I found a print on my bathroom mirror, perfectly centered, as if someone had placed their thumb there deliberately while staring at their reflection. Or at mine. The thought that someone had been watching me through that mirror in my most private moments was overwhelming. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. I set up a bed in the living room where cameras could monitor every angle, but the prints followed me there too. On the couch cushions, on the remote control, on the lamp I used for reading. Wherever I tried to create safety, the evidence of violation appeared. The private investigator called with news that changed everything. She had run the prints through databases, compared them to samples from people on my list. There was a match, but when she told me the name, my blood went cold. It wasn't someone I had suspected. It was someone I had never considered, someone I had trusted completely. The person whose prints were scattered throughout my house, who had been living invisibly in my space, touching my belongings and watching my life, was someone I should have recognized immediately. Someone whose presence in my house wouldn't have triggered any security systems because they belonged there. Someone who had every right to be there. But that person had been dead for over a year. I stared at the investigation report, at the fingerprint comparison, at the undeniable evidence. The prints belonged to someone who couldn't possibly be leaving them. Yet there they were, fresh and clear, appearing daily in my house. The logical part of my mind rejected the impossibility. The terrified part wondered what I had missed, what I hadn't understood about the person I thought I knew. I pulled out old fingerprint records, comparing them myself. The match was perfect. Every ridge, every whorl, every unique identifier. But the person they belonged to was gone, had been gone, should have been gone. The house felt different now, not violated but haunted by questions I couldn't answer. Were the prints really theirs? Had I missed something obvious about their death? Was someone playing an elaborate, cruel joke? Or was I losing my grip on reality, seeing patterns that didn't exist, finding evidence of the impossible? I sit in my living room now, surrounded by cameras and sensors, watching for prints that shouldn't appear, left by hands that shouldn't exist. The security system remains silent. The motion detectors show no activity. Yet each morning I find new evidence of a presence that defies explanation. The worst part isn't the fear anymore, it's the doubt. The questioning of everything I thought I knew about death, about closure, about the finality of loss. The prints continue to appear, and I continue to document them, trapped between the impossible and the undeniable. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the person leaving these prints knows I've discovered them, if they understand the torment they're causing, if they're trying to tell me something I'm too frightened to understand. The prints are always gentle, never destructive, almost careful, almost loving. But love doesn't explain how the dead can touch the living, and I'm running out of rational explanations for the evidence that appears new each day, left by someone who should no longer be able to leave anything at all. Story 10, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its time-worn features telling silent tales of bygone eras. The heating system emitted a low, rhythmic groan, and the pipes whispered their own secrets as they rattled through the walls. To the casual observer, it was merely the building settling, the old infrastructure expressing itself in creaks and sighs. But there was more to it, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. She, a tenant in this enigmatic place, had grown accustomed to the ambient noises, finding a strange comfort in their familiarity. Yet one night everything changed. A voice, faint yet unmistakable, drifted through the vents like a ghostly whisper. It wasn't the usual sounds of daily life filtering through the building. It was something else entirely, a voice calling out to her, uttering her name in a soft, haunting tone. Intrigued and unnerved, she pressed her ear against the metal grate, her heart quickening with each passing second. A sudden rush of icy air brushed against her cheek, followed by a delicate, almost playful utterance, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, found herself at the heart of this enigmatic mystery. Standing in the midst of the vacant apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The forensic team meticulously combed through the scene, their cameras capturing every detail as if preserving a moment frozen in time. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led them here, had left behind a puzzling trail of clues. Officer Patel, his voice steady as he recounted the details, mentioned Alina's reports of eerie voices echoing through the vents, a detail dismissed by the building management as mere quirks of an aging building. As Shaw knelt beside the vent, her sharp eyes caught sight of the deep scratches marking its edges. These were not random marks, they bore the desperation of someone trapped, of fingernails clawing frantically from within. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had shown signs of distress in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her sister, a beacon of concern and love, recounted Alina's growing paranoia, her belief that unseen eyes watched her every move, whispered to her through the very walls of her sanctuary. Surveying the apartment with newfound insight, Shaw noticed the subtle details that spoke volumes: the carefully made bed, the neglected coffee mug in the sink, the chair positioned strategically beneath the vent as if awaiting a listener. It was as though someone had been present, unseen yet palpable in their absence. The forensic revelations added layers to the enigma. Fibers entangled in the vent grill matched Aliner's favorite cardigan. A fingerprint foreign to Aliner's was discovered inside the vent cover, and haunting audio recordings from Aliner's phone unveiled a chilling dialogue between her and an unseen entity. Delving into the building's history unearthed a disturbing pattern. Previous tenants had fled, citing strange occurrences within these walls, a whisper here, a shadowy figure there. The superintendent, Harold Weber, a man of unassuming demeanor, held the keys to every door, every secret within the building. As Shaw probed deeper, Weber's facade began to crack. His nonchalant demeanor wavered when questioned about the occupants of apartment 4B, a flicker of unease betraying his stoic front. The investigation took a dark turn when a hidden passage within Aliner's bathroom revealed a clandestine network of tunnels connecting the very heart of the building. Inside this clandestine labyrinth, a trove of belongings hinted at a sinister truth, a voyeur lurking within the walls, observing, listening, and whispering to those oblivious to his presence. A search of Weber's meticulously tidy apartment unearthed a digital archive of his twisted obsessions, a chilling testament to his disturbing fixation on Aliner and others. Weber's arrest, though devoid of resistance, carried an eerie weight. His serene smile as he was apprehended hinted at a deeper connection he believed existed between him and his victims, a macabre bond forged in shadows and whispers. The truth, when unveiled, painted a grim picture of a predator ensnaring souls within the very fabric of the building. Aliner's fate, sealed within the metal veins of the ventilation system, bore the mark of a calculated manipulation. Sedated and disoriented, she had ventured deeper into the labyrinthine ducts, following the siren call of safety promised by the unseen malevolence that lurked within. The echoes of Weber's deeds reverberated beyond Aliner's tragedy. Families of past tenants came forward with tales of loss and unease, of items gone missing and minds tormented by unseen whispers. A pattern emerged, a tapestry of fear woven through the years by a malevolent force hidden in plain sight. At the trial, Weber's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence against him. His claims of symbiosis with the building rang hollow against the meticulous planning and sinister intent laid bare before the court. The jury's swift verdict echoed the finality of justice, served a verdict of guilt on all counts. As Weber was led away, his chilling parting words lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the darkness that once dwelled within these walls. The building, now a hollow shell of its former self, stood silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within its confines. Despite attempts to erase the scars of the past, the whispers endured. Residents spoke of strange sounds emanating from the vents, of ghostly murmurs in the dead of night, of a presence that lingered long after its source had been extinguished. The building's legacy, tainted by Weber's malevolence, whispered of a darkness that refused to be silenced, a reminder that some secrets are buried so deep they become a part of the very foundation on which they stand. Story 11, in the shadows of a worn-down hotel where time seemed to stand still, a weary traveler checked in for a brief respite. The clerk's gaze held a hint of warning as he handed over the key, his words barely a whisper, just, "Avoid the last door on the left." Intrigue sparked within her like a flame flickering in the darkness. That night, under the soft glow of flickering lights, she found herself drawn to that forbidden door. The chill of the handle sent shivers down her spine as she leaned in, listening intently. A faint breath, almost imperceptible, whispered from the other side, stirring a sense of mystery in her soul. Detective Eliza Morgan Reed, with a mind sharp as a blade, entered the room marked by tragedy. The air was heavy with the scent of iron, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered the peace. Among the stark contrasts within the room, a young woman lay lifeless on the floor, her beauty frozen in time. Reed knelt beside her, absorbing the silent screams etched in the victim's vacant gaze. It was a scene of sorrow, of endings that came too soon. The forensic technician's clinical voice pierced the silence, recounting the grim familiarity of the crime. Another life snuffed out, leaving behind unanswered questions and shattered dreams. Reed absorbed the details, each piece of evidence a puzzle to be solved. The victim's elegant attire spoke of a life extinguished in its prime, a stark contradiction to the motel's desolation. Back at the station, Reed delved into the web of connections linking the victims, their lives intertwined by a thread of tragedy. Each woman a reflection of the other, lost to the same cruel fate. The whispers of a serial predator haunted the corridors of the town, casting a shadow of fear over its inhabitants. As the investigation deepened, Reed unearthed secrets hidden in the shadows. A trail of breadcrumbs led her to Elaine Werner's elusive lover, a man shrouded in deceit. Charles Emerson, a pillar of the community, harbored a darkness that chilled Reed to the core. Behind his polished fa-a-de lurked a predator, preying on unsuspecting souls. With determination as her guide, Reed peeled back the layers of deception, revealing a twisted game of control and manipulation. Emerson's calculated moves left a trail of destruction in his wake, a legacy of broken lives and shattered innocence. The truth, like a dagger unsheathed, exposed the depths of his depravity. In the courtroom where justice meted out its final verdict, Reed locked eyes with the man who hid behind a mask of indifference. Emerson's hollow gaze held no remorse, no regret for the lives he had destroyed. The sentence pronounced, a chapter closed in the annals of crime, yet for Reed, the echoes of the past lingered on. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked in the most unexpected places. As Reed walked down hotel corridors, the memories of those lost souls lingered, a silent vigil in the night. The keys to those forbidden rooms, relics of a past best forgotten, lay dormant in the evidence locker, a reminder that some doors once opened can never truly be closed. Story 12. In the quiet solitude of her mother's attic, Sarah Winters uncovered a forgotten box of memories. Among the faded photographs of family gatherings from years gone by, a chilling discovery awaited her. The first snapshot, taken at her 7th birthday party, revealed a faint figure lurking in the background, just outside the warm glow of candlelight. Each subsequent photo showed the mysterious man drawing closer, his presence unnoticed by those in the frame. As Sarah delved deeper into the unsettling collection, she reached out to her father in a trembling voice, seeking answers to the enigma captured in the images. But his response was one of confusion and denial, unable to recognize the shadowy figure haunting the photographs. Determined to unravel the mystery, Sarah turned to Detective Marcus Reed, who listened intently as she laid out the eerie progression of the unknown man through the family gatherings. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the precinct as the detective examined the photos, his scrutiny unveiling a pattern of deliberate movement towards the unsuspecting children. Despite their efforts to identify the stranger, no one could place him at the events. Facial recognition technology faltered, leaving the elusive figure shrouded in secrecy. It wasn't until a computer specialist enhanced the images that crucial details emerged, linking the phantom presence to a long-forgotten maintenance worker named Robert Keller. A chilling connection emerged as Keller's dental records matched those of a suspect in decades-old child abductions, cases that had haunted the region for years. Further investigation revealed a dark history of disappearances tied to the rental properties where the family gatherings had taken place. The revelation of Keller's sinister past sent shivers down Sarah's spine as she realized the extent of the hidden danger lurking within the innocent snapshots of joyous occasions. The remains of a missing child found near one of the properties confirmed the grim reality behind the shadowy figure in the photographs. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the haunting images, Sarah contemplated the unseen threats that had infiltrated her family's celebrations. The box of photos now stood as a chilling testament to the hidden figures that moved through the past, leaving behind a trail of unspeakable horrors. As justice finally caught up with the malevolent presence captured in the frames, Sarah closed the lid on the box, knowing that some secrets are best left undisturbed, buried beneath the surface of smiling faces frozen in time. The mysterious figure once concealed in the shadows had been unmasked at last, his legacy of darkness exposed to the light of truth. Story 13, The Costume Emporium, was on its final days, its shelves stripped bare as it purged its remnants of a bygone era. Amidst the chaos of liquidation, a lone woman reached for a mask hidden in the shadows, its delicate features both enchanting and eerily lifelike. Placing it on the counter, she watched as the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "That mask doesn't belong here," he murmured cryptically. Perplexed, she sought a tag but found none, deciding to bring it home with her, the mask's presence already seeping into her thoughts. That very night, a soft rustling stirred her from slumber, a whisper of fabric dancing in the air. Her eyes fluttered open to find the mask no longer resting on the dresser where she had left it. Instead, it perched ominously on her nightstand, its vacant gaze fixed upon her. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, would later be discovered by her concerned neighbor, the morning light spilling into her darkened abode through a slightly ajar door. What awaited inside would etch a chilling tale in the annals of investigation. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, shadows playing against the walls as forensics meticulously documented the tragedy. The rhythmic click of shutters punctuated the hushed whispers of the team as they combed through the enigmatic setting. No signs of forced entry, an officer jotted down, his pen scratching against paper. The detective's keen eye caught subtle details, a drawer left ajar, a lipstick-stained water glass ordinary yet tinged with the foreboding presence of the deceased. Catherine lay motionless, her features frozen in a mask of terror, a mystery veiling her final moments. The medical examiner, his expression grave, puzzled over the cause of death, finding no visible wounds or signs of struggle. The terror etched on her face, he remarked, drawing the detective's attention. Something beyond the physical realm took her. Catherine, an art appraiser known for her meticulous eye, seemed to have stumbled upon something beyond her expertise, a brush with the macabre that would seal her fate. Security footage from the costume shop unveiled a peculiar interaction, the cashier's bewilderment at the mask's existence, a silent denial from the owner. The detective delved deeper, confronting the shop owner who nervously recounted the mask's mysterious origins, tied to a collector's estate sale shadowed by tragedy and whispers of the occult. A breakthrough emerged as forensics uncovered microscopic fibers entwined in Catherine's grasp, hinting at a struggle unseen. The fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentifiable organic substance, defied modern analysis, leading the investigation down a path of ancient enigmas and unsolved deaths shrouded in fear. Retracing the grim history, the detective unearthed a retired investigator who shared a chilling revelation, a ritual of soul transference linked to the masks, each harboring arcane symbols that hinted at a sinister purpose. Catherine's hidden journal shed light on her descent into dread, her frantic entries detailing the mask's malevolent sentience, its insidious presence preying on her sanity. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the true horror of Catherine's demise unraveled, a heart seized by terror, a life snuffed out by an unseen force. Surveillance footage unveiled a spectral figure leaving her home, donning the mask with her likeness, an eerie mimicry that defied explanation. Months later, whispers surfaced of the mask's reappearance in a distant vintage shop, slipping through the fingers of investigators once more. Its new owner remained a mystery, leaving the case unresolved, a haunting specter lingering in the shadows. The detective, keeper of Catherine's journal, stood vigil against the encroaching darkness, haunted by the knowledge of a malevolent entity that traversed time and space in search of new vessels. As night descended, she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a reminder of the mask's insatiable hunger for souls, a cycle of terror perpetuated across centuries. The mask, a harbinger of death and dread, lay dormant, biding its time until it found its next unwitting host, its empty gaze fixated on the horizon, awaiting the moment when it would once again claim a life, perpetuating its unholy legacy. Story 14. The worn envelope bore the marks of time, its edges tinged yellow, yet the stamp gleamed fresh as if just affixed days before. With a cautious touch, the detective unfolded its contents. A single sheet of paper greeted them, the message typed hastily in a jagged, uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, a metallic scent lingering in the air. Only upon closer inspection did they notice the reddish streak along the bottom edge, a chilling revelation. It was not ink staining the paper. Detective Sarah Morgan, her hands gloved with precision, carefully secured the letter in an evidence bag. The forensics team had already confirmed her suspicions. The reddish hue was human blood, a match to DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop missing, her notes scattered, hinting at a connection to a story she had been pursuing. Despite exhaustive interviews and endless hours of investigation, the case had grown cold. And now this enigmatic letter arrived at the precinct, simply addressed to Homicide Division. Scant fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, mere smudges indicating the sender's caution. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope, a light after months of stagnation. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, walls adorned with the shadows of unsolved crimes. She affixed the image of the letter at the heart of the board. "This changes everything," she murmured to the room. "Our culprit shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner, scrutinized the letter. "Or wishes us to believe they do," he countered. "The blood may be a theatrical ploy, a means of toying with us." The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production. Rare but not unattainable, they scoured antique shops and collectors across the region. As the investigation gained traction, they delved into Rebecca's world. Her editor painted a picture of a fearless journalist unearthing corruption with fervor. Her latest probe delved into a prominent family entrenched in local politics. With the patriarch's recent demise, a discordant inheritance dispute had arisen, siblings accusing each other of deceit. Questioning Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed a shift in demeanor since their initial meeting. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia fueled by her investigation. I should have listened." While the team pursued this lead, a second letter materialized, bearing the same typewritten message, the same crimson stain. This time the confession ran deeper. She possessed too much knowledge about the family, about the inheritance, about the patriarch's demise. I never intended for it to escalate. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, resided. Among his collection of antiquities lay several vintage typewriters. His account of them seemed rehearsed, polished. A breakthrough surfaced as microscopic fibers on the envelopes matched custom stationery belonging to the youngest daughter, Eleanor. Under scrutiny, Eleanor disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery weeks earlier. A search of Richard's abode unveiled a concealed chamber housing incriminating evidence clippings of Rebecca, surveillance snapshots, and a vintage typewriter akin to the one used for the letters. Blood analysis confirmed it belonged to Rebecca. Unforeseen was the link between Richard and Michael. Financial records unveiled significant transactions from Richard to Michael preceding Rebecca's demise. Confronted, Michael broke down. Rebecca uncovered Richard's plot to hasten his inheritance by poisoning his father, he revealed. I informed Richard of her discoveries, intending only to scare her off. I never envisioned he would take her life. The puzzle neared completion when Eleanor presented a clandestine recording capturing Richard and Michael plotting Rebecca's fate. Richard's voice damningly clear. She must be silenced permanently. Richard's attempt to flee culminated in his arrest. The prosecution built its case upon the letters, the typewriter, the financial exchanges, and Eleanor's recording. Michael accepted a plea deal, offering testimony. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, accusing Michael of framing him. Yet the evidence spoke resoundingly. The jury swiftly rendered a guilty verdict after deliberation. As Richard faced imprisonment, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents in the courtroom, a silent solace in her gaze. Though words could not resurrect their daughter, the verdict proffered a semblance of peace. The blood-stained letters found their resting place in evidence storage, a testament that even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes leave traces, and that remorse, be it authentic or strategic, can be the undoing of those who believe they have committed the perfect crime. The enigma of Rebecca Warren's case endured as a beacon in detective lore, a reminder that breakthroughs emerge not solely from advanced forensics, but from the weight of guilt borne by a killer's conscience, as heavy as the shadows of the night. Story 15. The town kept silent about the house at the edge of the woods, a place forgotten by time. Its weathered frame loomed solitary, windows dark, porch weary from years of neglect. No one laid claim to its ownership, no memory lingered of its builder. Yet when a band of hikers strayed too near, they stumbled upon an eerie sight, names carved into the wooden siding, etched deep like ancient omens. Among them, at the very end, was a fresh name, untouched by age, unfamiliar to all. Until a tremulous voice broke the silence, whispering, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call came through to dispatch, a routine report of trespassing. The caller, Mason Wright, lead hiker of the group, who found his name etched into the abandoned house. Responding officers anticipated mere mischief, a teenage prank at best, but what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as dusk descended upon the forest. Her flashlight pierced the shadows, revealing the names 27 in total running vertically down the eastern wall. Some barely visible, faded by time, while others remained sharp as if freshly carved. And at the base, Mason Wright, the cut still smelling faintly of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his words hanging in the icy air. "I can't fathom how my name came to be here." The inquiry commenced with background checks on each listed name, sending shivers down the spines of the investigative team. Every name belonged to a missing person from the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others lingered open, but all shared a chilling similarity: the vanished individuals had been lone hikers. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the depth, technique, and aging of the inscriptions. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, tied to a missing person case dating back 37 years. The records painted a grim picture of a young woman who ventured into these very woods and never returned, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller probed Mason's account extensively. His narrative remained unwavering. He had no ties to the area beyond this outing with his college friends. They had picked the trail at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his past hinted at a connection to the other names adorning the wall. Attention turned to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, produced images capturing their hike. Upon closer inspection, analysts noticed a disconcerting detail: a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 separate photos. A tall, slender shape, partly obscured by trees. "We saw no one else on the trail," Emily declared. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. Deserted, covered in dust, the structure revealed a sinister secret in the basement. Personal effects of the missing hikers arranged meticulously on shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each item tagged with a name from the exterior wall. Blood patterns under UV light on the concrete floor hinted at attempts to erase years of stains. Though no bodies lurked beneath the house, cadaver dogs signaled at the dense forest's edge behind the property. As the investigation deepened, Mason's behavior turned erratic. Reports of whispers, mysterious footprints, and shadowy figures stalking him prompted round-the-clock protection. Yet paranoia gripped him tighter. A breakthrough came with buried land records revealing the house's reclusive owner, Victor Blackwood, a vanished hunter. Rarely seen by neighbors, described as tall and gaunt, he shunned interaction. Blackwood's disappearance 15 years prior had never been probed. Detective Keller secured a warrant to scour the surrounding woods. A network of crude hunting blinds awaited, strategically placed along popular trails. Within one blind, a journal surfaced, chronicling detailed observations of hikers' routes, gear, habits. Handwriting matched Blackwood's few known documents. Entries evolved from animal hunting tactics to sinister narratives of human prey selection, culminating in elaborate stalking accounts of each victim on the wall. A manhunt ensued, spanning jurisdictions. Helicopters with thermal imaging combed the forest, tactical units scoured every crevice. Yet the elusive Blackwood evaded capture. Mason's disappearance, coupled with a chilling message freshly carved in his bedroom, escalated the urgency. Weeks passed with no trace of Mason. A grim revelation surfaced during a revisit to Blackwood's house, a hidden workshop behind a false wall, woodworking tools, preservatives, and a freshly carved name awaiting its place on the exterior wall. The name belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the initial investigation, unreachable since calling in sick. Surveillance tightened around the house, cameras vigilant, sensors alert. 3 nights later, a figure emerged from the forest, towering and slender, moving with eerie grace. Tactical teams closed in, but the figure vanished, leaving no trace. To this day, the house remains under watch, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that dwell within. Mason and the technician vanished without a trace, the investigation ongoing as similar disappearances plague forested regions. The names on the wall have become a whispered legend among investigators, a chilling tale that few dare to speak of. Hikers steer clear, fearful that even mentioning the house could seal their fate among the silent names. Story 16. The fresh occupants initially dismissed it as mere peeling wallpaper. However, as they delicately removed the layers, a different narrative unfolded. Scrawled in ink repeatedly was a name. The same name occupying every inch of the wall, penned in a frantic, uneven script. It did not match the names of the previous proprietors and was absent from any official records. Yet a search online led them to a solitary outcome, a missing persons case from decades past. What sent shivers down their spines was the uncanny resemblance between the woman in the aged photo and the individual who had handed them the keys to the house. Michael and Sarah Klein had no immediate plans to refurbish the Victorian-era abode. The alluring old dwelling came at a surprisingly modest price, and the former owner, a reserved, graceful woman with strands of silver in her dark hair, had appeared eager to sell, mentioning her upcoming move across the country. The couple felt drawn to the residence's character, its intricate woodwork and soaring ceilings whispering tales of a bygone era. It all commenced with a simple water stain in the main bedroom. Sarah observed a yellowish blotch spreading across the floral wallpaper. Upon Michael pressing his fingers against it, the paper gave way, unveiling another stratum below. Intrigued, they gingerly peeled back the damaged area. The first layer unveiled outdated paisley designs from the 1970s. Beneath that, striped paper from a prior decade. But as they persisted, an unexpected sight emerged in the third layer down. Writing. Dark ink on faded beige paper. Not random scrawls, but a name, Alina Winters, repeatedly inscribed, the script growing increasingly desperate and erratic across the wall. "Who is Alina Winters?" Sarah murmured, her fingers tracing the frenzied writing. The discovery left them unsettled. That night Michael sat at the kitchen island, laptop aglow, delving into property records. The house had changed hands multiple times over the years. No trace of Alina Winters appeared in any documentations. The woman who had sold them the house was identified as Margaret Cavendish. Sarah joined him, clutching her coffee mug. Try searching just the name. The internet search yielded sparse results until they stumbled upon an archived newspaper article, digitized from microfiche. Alina Winters, age 27, reported missing during winter. The monochrome photograph portrayed a young woman with dark locks and distinctive eyes mirroring those of Margaret Cavendish, the house's former owner. "This article dates back 30 years, Michael remarked, his voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. Margaret could be the right age now, but... Sarah swallowed hard. The missing woman never received closure. No body found, no suspects named. Their intrigue morphed into an obsession. Sarah reached out to the preceding homeowners, retracing their steps through county records. The renovation work paused as they dedicated their evenings to this impromptu investigation. They discovered that Margaret Cavendish had owned the house for merely 7 months before selling it to them, an unusual occurrence given the extensive paperwork and inspections they had undergone. The retired detective assigned to the cold case had long left the force. When Michael managed to locate him, the man vividly recalled the case. His voice crackled through the speakerphone as he narrated the investigation. Alina Winters was reported missing by her roommate. No signs of struggle at her place. Her car found abandoned near the highway. The case went cold quickly, no witnesses, no signs of foul play, simply vanished. Michael hesitated before inquiring, "Did you ever speak with a Margaret Cavendish?" Silence lingered on the line. "Number name doesn't ring a bell. Why?" Upon elucidating their findings and sharing photos of both women, the retired detective promised to make inquiries. Within days, a detective from the current force reached out, seeking permission to examine the wall. Their residence transformed into an active crime scene. Forensic teams meticulously cataloged and removed sections of the wallpaper. Analysis dated the ink back roughly 30 years. Handwriting experts compared the wall inscriptions to samples of Aliner's handwriting from old journals provided by her family. The conclusions remained inconclusive. Meanwhile, Sarah stumbled upon a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet's floorboards. Inside lay a driver's license belonging to Aliner Winters alongside various identification cards bearing different names. All depicted the same countenance with subtle variations: hair color, glasses, expressions. The final ID, Margaret Cavendish, matched the seller of their home. When authorities tried to locate Margaret utilizing the forwarding address she had given, it turned out to be non-existent. Her phone number was defunct. The bank account receiving their payment had been closed. Margaret Cavendish had vanished, much like Aliner Winters had decades earlier. Then a revelation emerged that reshaped the investigation. DNA tests on hair strands extracted from deep within the wall cavity matched Aliner Winters. However, fingerprints lifted from the writing matched a different profile altogether, one belonging to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, institutionalized shortly after Aliner's disappearance. Rebecca Eldridge had been diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder, frequently escaping the institution over the years. Her medical records unveiled something unsettling: one of her documented alter egos, identified as Aliner. The investigation unveiled that Rebecca had been Aliner's childhood friend, fixated on her to the point of imitation. When Aliner rebuffed her increasingly disturbing advances, something within Rebecca fractured. She assumed Aliner's identity literally and metaphorically, and crafted an intricate network of personas to sustain the charade. The scribbled name symbolized Rebecca's desperate bid to retain her grasp on reality, to recollect her true self beneath the assumed identities. The wall had turned into both a confession and a prison, a tangible reflection of her fragmented psyche. Sarah and Michael observed from their front porch as forensic teams excavated specific sections of their backyard, guided by ground-penetrating radar detecting anomalies beneath the surface. The cold case had taken an unexpected turn. The remains unearthed from beneath the garden belonged to Aliner Winters. Rebecca Eldridge, known to Michael and Sarah as Margaret Cavendish, was eventually apprehended while attempting to cross the border with yet another identity. When confronted with evidence, the persona presenting as Margaret crumbled, giving way to another who confessed to Aliner's murder in a fit of jealousy. The names on the wall had served as both a memorial and a manifestation of guilt, inscribed by a fractured mind attempting to cling to shreds of truth despite itself. For Aliner's family, justice arrived 3 decades late. For Michael and Sarah, their cherished home turned infamous, a footnote in true crime lore, forever remembered as the house where the walls themselves confessed to a heinous act. Story 17. In the quiet anticipation of a new arrival, she felt the urge to refresh the nursery, to paint over the faded blue walls that seemed to hold secrets of years past within their layers. As the first stroke of white paint glided over the surface, a hidden message slowly emerged, almost as if beckoning to be seen. "Don't let it hear you." The words sent a shiver down her spine, making her pause in disbelief. Stepping back, her eyes caught sight of something even more unsettling: tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, positioned too high for any child to reach. This unexpected discovery within the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the beginning of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. Not long ago, a young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home at an unbelievably low price, unaware of the dark history that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein, carrying her notebook filled with unanswered questions, arrived at the residence. A pregnant woman greeted her, her weariness evident in the circles under her eyes and the tremble in her voice as she recounted the chilling encounter with the hidden message and handprints. The woman shared that the previous owners had abruptly fled in the dead of night, leaving behind only essential belongings in their hasty departure. As Detective Klein explored the old house, the floors creaked beneath her weight, echoing the passage of time. Standing in the nursery, she studied the half-painted wall where the ominous message still lingered, a stark reminder of the past. Beside it, 5 small handprints left in the wet paint, hauntingly placed at the height of an adult's shoulders. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's history, uncovering a series of unsettling events that had occurred within its walls. The house had changed owners numerous times, each family staying for a brief period before fleeing. Child welfare reports hinted at whispers from unseen sources and a sense of constant surveillance that had plagued the children of past residents. Further investigation revealed a connection to Alina Blackwood, a wealthy widow who once ran an orphanage from the property, where 5 children had mysteriously vanished without a trace. Interviews with former residents unveiled a pattern of eerie incidents, rearranged toys, ghostly laughter, and cryptic messages appearing on the walls of the nursery. The handwriting matched that of Alina Blackwood, raising chilling questions about the house's dark past. The mystery deepened as forensic analysis of the handprints revealed a disturbing consistency across different generations of children. The turning point came when the detective obtained permission to scan the basement with ground-penetrating radar, leading to the grim discovery of 5 child-sized shapes buried beneath the concrete floor. Excavation uncovered the remains of the missing children, each wearing a pendant bearing their name, a tragic confirmation of their fate at the hands of Alina Blackwood. With the truth unearthed, the nursery was bathed in the glow of luminol, revealing countless handprints etched into the walls, a silent plea for justice from the lost souls. Alina's journals shed light on her twisted motives, believing that the children's energy could prolong her own life. The case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, their names finally honored as victims of a heinous crime. The house, tainted by its dark legacy, stood abandoned as the pregnant couple refused to set foot inside again. Detective Klein filed her final report, documenting the eerie handprints and the chilling message that persisted through time. Despite the closure brought by the investigation, an unsettling presence lingered within the walls, a reminder that some secrets are too deep to be erased by mere paint. As the nursery walls crumbled during the cleansing process, workers reported hearing whispers echoing from the debris, a ghostly reminder of the past that refused to fade. The house, now condemned, became another enigmatic chapter in the annals of unsolved mysteries, a physical testament to closure, yet a lingering enigma that whispered through the ages. And in the detective's possession remained a photograph capturing the luminol handprints, a haunting testament to the enduring mark of a tragic history. Story 18, The Realtor's Secret. The listing by the realtor made no mention of a basement. The blueprints meticulously examined revealed no trace of it. Yet as the family peeled back the worn carpet in their new home, they uncovered a hidden door. Its handle, heavy and rusted, required the strength of 3 to pry it open. A rush of stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, greeted them as they descended the steps into darkness. Expecting storage space, they were met with a single chair under a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows. And there on the wall, a row of photographs of them. The Mercer family had moved into the suburban property during a winter of early darkness and barren trees. The house, with its creaking floors and faded siding, exuded character and history. Little did they know the depth of history the house held and how violently it would collide with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already at work, securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled as she recounted what lay hidden beneath their living room floor. Connors, donning latex gloves with practiced ease, ordered the meticulous documentation of everything before further exploration. The basement, resembling a standard bedroom in size, revealed concrete walls painted gray, with a solitary chair bolted in the center. The bare bulb above cast harsh shadows, its slow spin creating an ominous atmosphere. However, it was the wall of photographs that drew their focus images arranged chronologically, capturing intimate moments of the family. No signs of forced entry, no theft, only a profound invasion of privacy. Forensic analysis uncovered fingerprints, mostly belonging to the property's previous owners. The house had changed hands multiple times, each family staying briefly, unaware of the hidden basement. Connors delved into the property's history, uncovering unsettling inconsistencies and redacted records. Interviewing the contractor who renovated the house years ago yielded chilling denials of the existence of the basement. Digital forensics unveiled a trove of images and audio recordings, showcasing a sophisticated surveillance operation within the house. The revelation of a hidden monitoring station and a journal filled with meticulous observations tied the mystery to the house's builder, Edward Kelvin. Kelvin, believed dead during construction, had in fact retreated into the hidden spaces of the house, becoming a ghostly observer of its inhabitants. His capture after a 3-day manhunt exposed his delusions of ownership and guardianship over the families who resided there. As Kelvin faced trial and the house was demolished, the families haunted by the violation of their privacy wondered if they had ever truly been alone in their own home. The memory of Edward Kelvin lingered, a specter of surveillance that had shattered their sense of security forever. And in quiet moments, they still felt the weight of unseen eyes, questioning if they were ever truly alone. Story 19. Deep within the cluttered attic, the old box lay hidden, a time-worn treasure trove lost to the ages. Among the forgotten relics of the house's past inhabitants, it held secrets in faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and togetherness. Yet one photograph stood apart, shrouded in mystery and unease. In that final image, within her own living room, a family unfamiliar to Rebecca smiled for the camera, unaware of the lurking figure in the shadows behind them. A man, silent and watchful, his presence sending a chill down her spine. Descending the creaking stairs with the unsettling photo in hand, Rebecca felt the weight of the house pressing in around her, suffocating in its emptiness. Placing the picture on the cold kitchen counter, under the harsh glare of fluorescent light, she couldn't deny the uncanny resemblance between her home and the unknown family frozen in time. Enter Detective Morgan, a weathered investigator with eyes that missed nothing, his gaze steady as he examined the photograph with a keen intensity. Delving into the murky past of the house's previous occupants, he uncovered a disturbing pattern of families disappearing without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. The Sutherland family, the missing link in the chain of vanishing residents, had left no trail behind, no hint of their fate. As the investigation deepened, forensic analysis of the Polaroid revealed chilling details: the figure in the hallway, a phantom presence watching from the shadows, a silent observer of lives unfolding within those walls. Piece by piece, the puzzle of the house's dark history unraveled, leading back to a shadowy figure from the past: Samuel Whitfield, the enigmatic architect with a macabre legacy. His spectral presence loomed large over the unraveling mystery, connecting the dots between the missing families and the sinister secrets buried within the house. Beneath the cold concrete of the basement, a grim discovery awaited preserved remains of the vanished families, a haunting testament to the horrors concealed within the house's walls. The sealed crime scene bore witness to a malevolent force at play, orchestrating a twisted game of cat and mouse with unsuspecting residents. As Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel, shielded by police protection, the sinister presence of Samuel Whitfield lingered, his unseen eyes fixed on her every move. The eerie phone call in the dead of night, the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera capturing her fear, all signs of a malevolent force determined to claim its next victim. And so the house stood silent, a sentinel of secrets untold, its dark corridors echoing with the whispers of the past. The enigma of Samuel Whitfield, a specter of malevolence, continued to elude capture, his legacy haunting those who dared to seek the truth hidden within the walls of his creation. In the darkness, new photographs developed, capturing unsuspecting families in their moments of bliss, unaware of the watchful eyes that lingered in the shadows. The cycle of mystery and dread persisted, a grim reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed, lest they awaken the dark forces that lie dormant within the forgotten corners of the past. Story 20. The aged apartment possessed its idiosyncrasies, pipes that groaned in the night, floorboards that whispered secrets. Yet the new tenant sensed a difference in the air, a subtle disturbance in the usual symphony of sounds. The footsteps, steady and deliberate, echoed from above, despite her abode resting on the highest floor. One fateful night, emboldened by curiosity, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick, breaking the rhythm of the unseen walker. The ensuing silence was pregnant with tension, until a solitary knock reverberated from within the very ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the peculiar incident to herself, attributing it to the settling of the old building or perhaps a curious critter exploring the attic space. Even as the nightly footsteps persisted, she adapted, drowning out the methodical pacing with amplified television and the solace of headphones, cocooned in a veil of distraction against the enigmatic presence that traversed her ceiling in the shroud of darkness. Detective Morris was led to the apartment by a maintenance worker who unearthed a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Upon dismantling a section of drywall to rectify a leak, an unanticipated passage was revealed, a clandestine realm that defied the building's blueprints. Illuminated by a flashlight, the covert enclave unveiled a semblance of habitation, a collage of food remnants, discarded water vessels, a worn blanket, and a weathered notebook. The superintendent promptly summoned the authorities. Upon arrival, Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, encountered the perturbed maintenance worker, his complexion pallid, his frame trembling. Someone dwelled within the walls, he reiterated, his voice a tremor of fear. Someone observed. The notebook chronicled meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, her visitors, her meals, her entertainment choices, her moments of respite. The script commenced with precision, but dissolved into chaos towards the conclusion, eccentric symbols adorning the margins. The subject now evades my influence, the final entry lamented. She dares to ignore me, none ignore me. Forensic specialists scoured the hidden passages, unveiling fingerprints that eluded identification in any known database. An intricate network of tunnels interlaced the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades as per structural analysis. These obscure conduits linked to multiple apartments, culminating in observation points, minuscule apertures disguised as fixtures or minor imperfections focused solely on Sarah Coleman's abode. Residences were canvassed, current occupants recounting mundane encounters marred solely by typical apartment clamors. Former denizens, however, relayed a contrasting narrative. 3 previous residents of Sarah's apartment divulged feelings of surveillance or unexplained disturbances, one departing after a mere fortnight. Their reticence stemmed from a fear of being branded paranoid. The breakthrough materialized with the revelation of minuscule blood traces in one of the crawlspace recesses. DNA analysis linked the residue to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior, residing directly beneath Sarah's quarters. A missing person report had been filed by his kin, the case relegated to obscurity. Martin had voiced complaints about noises emanating from above his dwelling, confronting the solitary occupant, Edward, who subsequently absconded, leaving no forwarding details. Delving into Edward's history, investigators discerned a recurrent pattern. A solitary figure, he had selected top-floor accommodations in 6 disparate buildings over 2 decades, cultivating minimal social connections before vanishing abruptly. A neighbor from his 3rd abode recollected his intensity and his incessant quest for silence. Records unveiled his acquisition of remote rural property, where a log cabin harbored a macabre archive. The cabin's walls served as a portrait gallery, featuring images of erstwhile residents from various locales, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Maps detailing ventilation systems and structural frailties adorned the walls, accompanied by journals detailing specimen observations and habitat maintenance. A corkboard at the cabin's heart displayed newspaper clippings of 6 vanished individuals, all connected to Edward's past abodes. Beneath it, the floor bore deep gouges, a testament to repeated dragging. Cadaver dogs led investigators to freshly disturbed earth behind the cabin, unearthing multiple graves. As forensic experts endeavored to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's abode. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, residents reported sporadic noises. During the installation of new security measures, a notebook was discovered tucked in a crevice where the ceiling met the wall, a newer addition to the unsettling saga. The initial page bore a chilling proclamation. They uncovered my former nest, but not my current one. The writing mirrored the prior journal, culminating in a sketch of Sarah's residence layout, a scarlet path marking a new passage. A foreboding date was inscribed for that very night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her residence deserted. Her phone lay dormant on the kitchen counter, the television casting a ghostly glow. Within the bathroom, a cryptic message materialized on the misted mirror. Look up. The ceiling panel above the shower had been displaced. The pursuit of Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction artisan, persists. His architectural expertise facilitated the creation of covert surveillance pathways within structures. Thermal imaging scans revealed no present occupancy within Sarah's walls. She remains missing, her plight linked to enigmatic disappearances spanning multiple states. Authorities have cautioned building managers regarding unauthorized alterations and concealed spaces. The haunting image that shadows Detective Morris is not the graves or the journals, but the unsuspecting faces captured in photographs. His mind wanders to Sarah, ensconced in her abode, the phantom footsteps above her, in an apartment devoid of an upper neighbor, the footsteps that answered her knocks and then echoed back. In the stillness of night, within his own residence, Detective Morris gazes upwards, attuned to the silence, pondering who else may be listening in the shadows. Story 21. In the attic, beneath a worn blanket, they discovered it. a porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently bought the Victorian house, initially brushed it off as just another forgotten relic of the past. Little did they know, this doll held a power beyond their understanding. That night a strange unease settled over the house. The air grew heavy, the whispers of silence stretching into the darkness, and when morning broke, the doll was no longer in the attic. It had found its way to the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel watching over them. Detective Rachel Winters, a keen investigator with a sharp eye for detail, was called to the scene of a chilling discovery. The bodies of a man and a woman posed in eerie positions, their faces frozen in terror. No signs of forced entry, no traces of a struggle, just a macabre scene that defied logic. As Detective Winters delved into the mystery, she uncovered a tapestry of strange occurrences surrounding the house. Neighbors spoke of shadows moving in empty rooms, of ghostly laughter echoing through the halls in the dead of night. The forensic team found traces of vintage fabrics, reminiscent of antique doll clothing, scattered throughout the house. Digging deeper, Detective Winters unearthed the dark history tied to the property. Previous owners had met tragic fates, each death shrouded in mystery and unanswered questions. A newspaper clipping revealed the tale of a doll maker who had once resided in the house, his final creation rumored to hold a piece of his own daughter's soul. The key to the puzzle lay hidden in the attic, where Sarah and Michael had unknowingly disturbed a malevolent force. Old photographs hinted at the doll's sinister origins, its ability to move unseen captured in fleeting moments frozen in time. Handprints, invisible to the naked eye, traced a path from the attic to the master bedroom, leaving behind a residue of porcelain dust and something unidentifiable. A distant relative of the doll maker whispered tales of dark rituals and forbidden knowledge, of spirits bound to inanimate objects to grant them a twisted semblance of life. With no tangible suspects or explanations, the case reached a dead end, leaving Detective Winters grasping at shadows. The doll, locked away as evidence, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a sense of lingering dread. Detective Winters, haunted by the unsolved mystery, retired from the force, taking with her a dark secret sealed in an envelope marked "Never Open." The new owners of the house chose to leave the attic undisturbed, a silent pact with forces beyond their control. Yet on quiet nights, whispers of a child's laughter and fleeting shadows behind the attic window reminded them that some mysteries are best left untouched, hidden in the shadows of the past. Story 22. The mysterious package arrived without a return label or tracking number, just a damp cardboard box glistening with morning dew. It was not intended for her, the name on it unfamiliar, but the address correct. Sarah Miller hesitated, knowing she should have ignored it, left it untouched on the porch. But curiosity beckoned her, whispering secrets she couldn't resist. With cautious hands, she peeled back the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothes. However, nestled inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a single sticky note that simply read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, sensing an unusual weight to it, as if it carried the burden of forbidden knowledge. Her fingers trailed the worn edges, feeling the grooves and imperfections etched into the plastic. The handwritten note bore the marks of urgency, each stroke pressed firmly onto the paper. Outside, the suburban world carried on its ordinary rhythm a distant dog's bark, the laughter of playing children, the drone of a lawnmower. Bringing the package inside, Sarah placed it on her kitchen counter, her mind clouded with uncertainty. The name Daniel Woodacre meant nothing to her in the 4 years she had lived in the house. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had long since moved away. Curiosity wrestled with apprehension as she eyed her old VCR, a relic of nostalgia gathering dust. There was something about the tape that called to her, a mystery shrouded in darkness. Against her instincts, Sarah inserted the tape into the VCR. Static crackled on the screen before sharpening into focus a dimly lit room with a man seated in a wooden chair, his features obscured by shadows. His voice, calm yet weighted with emotion, filled the room. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," he began, his eyes weary with fatigue. "If you're watching this, someone found you, which means they'll find me too." As Daniel spoke of innocence in a world of guilt, of framed fingerprints and planted evidence, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The camera panned to reveal a stark room, devoid of comfort, a temporary refuge for a man on the run. His tale of a murdered woman he claimed he never knew unfolded, a web of deceit spun by unseen hands. Detective Eliza Ramirez grappled with the enigma of Daniel Whitaker as she studied the tapes that had surfaced, each bearing his desperate plea for vindication. The case of Catherine Walsh's murder, once clear-cut, now blurred with shadows of doubt. The detective delved deeper, uncovering a web of corporate conspiracy and whistleblower revelations that painted a darker portrait of the crime. As Ramirez pieced together the puzzle, connecting the recipients of the tapes, a new truth emerged. Whitaker, an unwitting pawn in a game of deceit orchestrated by powerful forces, had stumbled upon a truth that threatened to expose their dark secrets. With each tape, each package of damning evidence, the veil of deception lifted, revealing a sinister plot to silence the truth. In a twist of fate, Sarah received a second package containing irrefutable proof of Catherine Walsh's crusade against PharmaCorp, the pharmaceutical giant entwined in corruption. Documents and emails spoke of cover-ups and collusion, of a brave woman silenced for seeking justice. The investigation took a sharp turn as Ramirez unraveled the threads of conspiracy, following Whitaker's trail of breadcrumbs to the heart of the deception. Locked in a storage unit, the truth awaited discovery, a journal detailing the conspiracy, the original evidence hidden from sight, and the damning plans to frame an innocent man. Justice, slow but relentless, closed in on the perpetrators as the web of lies unraveled. Executives fell, confessions were made, and the drug tainted with deceit was pulled from consideration. Daniel Whitaker emerged from the shadows, a changed man marked by the ordeal of his wrongful accusation. Sarah met him once more, their paths crossing in a moment of reflection. As they stood on her porch where it all began, she asked the question that lingered in the air. Why me? Why send it to my address? His gaze met hers, a silent understanding passing between them. The algorithm chose you, he murmured, haunted by the weight of truth and deception. The wrong address, a twist of fate, had led to the unraveling of a grand scheme, a reminder that sometimes justice arrives in unexpected packages, waiting for the curious and the brave to unveil its secrets. Story 23. She never enjoyed venturing up to the attic, but circumstances left her with no choice when a storm caused a leak in the roof. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, cloaked in layers of dust and cobwebs. Amidst the shadows in the deepest corner sat an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, its miniature furnishings meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed into its tiny rooms, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures within were not dolls, they were minute, hand-carved replicas of her own family. Each tiny figure meticulously placed, mirroring the exact positions of her family members downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic door, a silent sentinel watching over the miniature abode. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the indent where the tiny wooden figure stood. A sense of unease washed over her, unrelated to the cold draft whispering through the attic. This dollhouse should not have been there at all. This was not the house of her childhood, but a rental property her family had recently moved into. The discovery led Rebecca to make a frantic call to law enforcement. Officers arrived at the suburban residence to find a family in distress, gathered in the living room, unwilling to return upstairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their fears as a prank or the product of an overactive imagination in a new home. However, the meticulous craftsmanship of the dollhouse caught Detective Harmon's attention. Each tiny figurine captured a unique characteristic of a family member: the father's receding hairline, the teenager's hoodie, even the small birthmark on the mother's hand. The investigation took a chilling turn when forensic teams uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match any family member. Even more unsettling were the microscopic cameras hidden within the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system concealed beneath the dollhouse. Analysis of the Morgan family's movements revealed a disturbing pattern. The positions of the miniature figures did not just mimic their current evening positions, but exact postures from different days, indicating that someone had been observing them long enough to learn their routines. We soon realized this was more than just stalking, Detective Harmon explained. The level of obsession displayed by the perpetrator was unlike anything we had encountered before. The investigation unveiled a hidden entrance to a basement concealed behind a false wall in the pantry. Inside, investigators found evidence of someone living there before the Morgans moved in. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted at a prolonged stay under the family's feet. What baffled investigators was the absence of forced entry, as property records showed the house had been vacant for almost a year prior to the family's arrival. Interviews with neighbors provided few leads, except for one elderly woman who sporadically noticed lights in the vacant house. The breakthrough came through digital forensics, leading investigators to a small apartment across town. Within, they uncovered a plethora of photographs of the Morgan family and previous occupants, alongside detailed journals outlining their daily routines. The most unsettling discovery was a workshop filled with partially constructed dollhouses representing various homes in the area. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the house's previous owners. Financial records revealed Wells had accrued debts following his parents' demise and had devised a scheme to continue living in the house while renting it out. The dollhouse served as his control hub, the forensic psychologist assigned to the case explained. Each miniature figure represented a person he watched. Rebecca's figure by the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his way of acknowledging her discovery of his surveillance. During questioning, Wells remained eerily composed, revealing that his actions stemmed from a possessive delusion. Unable to cope with losing his childhood home, he sought to maintain control through an intricate system. The dollhouse became his way of asserting dominance over both the property and its occupants. The Morgans never returned to the house, haunted not just by the dollhouse itself, but by the realization of being observed and manipulated. Wells faced multiple charges, including stalking, invasion of privacy, and illegal surveillance. The case spurred a reassessment of real estate disclosure laws and agent responsibilities. The judge, during sentencing, highlighted the egregious violation of the Morgan family's privacy and security. What particularly unnerved criminologists was the potential duration of Wells' clandestine activities had Rebecca not uncovered the dollhouse. Examination of his journals suggested he had been covertly living in homes for years, meticulously observing and documenting families. Although the Morgan family found a new home far from the haunting memories, Rebecca admitted to lingering feelings of unease. She removed all miniature replicas and dollhouses from their new abode, expressing a lingering fear of being watched. "Some days I still feel eyes upon me," she confessed. "I wonder if somewhere out there, a tiny version of me is being manipulated in a dollhouse I have yet to find." Story 24. She wiped away the steam from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her face, her attire. Yet a subtle unease crept in as she continued to look. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement that didn't seem her own. And when she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing her in silence. This peculiar incident marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What unfolded next would puzzle investigators and linger in the minds of the community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest apartment nestled within a serene suburban area. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she mostly kept to herself while maintaining polite interactions with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a medium-sized company dictated a life governed by routines and exactitude. No one would have suspected that she would soon become entwined in one of the most enigmatic criminal enigmas of the era. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's living space seemed to have shifted slightly, nothing missing, just rearranged. A coffee mug placed on a different shelf, books reorganized, her toothbrush oddly relocated. She brushed off these occurrences as mere lapses in memory, attributing them to the long hours spent poring over spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights, straining her vision. When Rebecca finally reached out to the authorities after weeks of these disturbances, Detective Marion Shaw received the report. Initially, the assessment leaned towards a mental health concern rather than a criminal matter. There were no tangible signs of a break-in, no broken locks, no missing items, just a woman who sensed a disturbance within her own home. However, everything changed with the incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted in vivid detail how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt a constant gaze upon her even in solitude. This time, she had evidence a security camera installed to monitor her front door. The footage unearthed a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, followed by an exact replica of her using a key to enter the apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic scrutiny revealed no signs of tampering or digital manipulation. The intruder moved like Rebecca, dressed like her, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. Yet, according to time-stamped records from her workplace's security system, Rebecca had already clocked in across town. "We're dealing with a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with eerie precision." The investigation escalated as fingerprints within the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA traces were found. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's usual comings and goings. Except for Mrs. Keller, who mentioned a peculiar encounter with Rebecca that left her unanswered but not alarmed. As the disturbances escalated, Rebecca began documenting every anomaly in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space multiplied. Food vanished from her fridge, unexplained searches appeared on her computer, and unsettling selfies surfaced on her phone, images of herself with expressions slightly askew, an eerie mimicry of her own visage. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. Or perhaps someone wants me to believe so. A breakthrough occurred when a pattern emerged from the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated Rebecca's apartment during her absence for specific pre-planned activities, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery trips. It was a calculated surveillance and infiltration, not random but meticulously targeted. A forensic psychologist proposed a theory of fixation, a case where an individual becomes fixated on another, longing to embody their identity entirely. The fixation typically stemmed from a psychological break, with the perpetrator coveting traits symbolized by their victim: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus of the investigation sharpened when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had worked closely with Rebecca, often remarking on the similarities between them. Post-dismissal, Lily sent Rebecca unsettling emails hinting at a disturbing connection between them. With a warrant secured, Detective Shaw and her team searched Lily's residence, uncovering a chilling revelation that transformed the case from perplexing to horrifying. A room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were plastered with photos of Rebecca engaged in various activities, none of which she was aware of. A closet harbored replicas of Rebecca's wardrobe, while a vanity displayed makeup identical to what Rebecca used, alongside detailed observations of Rebecca's behaviors and routines. Most chilling were the practice videos where Lily imitated Rebecca's walk, gestures, and expressions. The recordings showcased a progression from clumsy mimicry to near-perfect replication of Rebecca's mannerisms. "She wanted to be me," Rebecca whispered upon viewing the evidence. "Not just mimic me, erase me." Sophisticated equipment for key duplication and electronic access card forging was unearthed in Lily's possession. She had meticulously tracked Rebecca's movements, maintaining a calendar predicting her schedule in detail. However, Lily's ultimate intentions remained elusive. Journals found in her residence contained cryptic entries shifting between first and third person, blurring the lines between herself and Rebecca. The final entry sent shivers down the investigators' spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger one shall prevail." When the authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her abrupt departure was evident in the disarray of her apartment, a hasty exit leaving behind missing technology and open drawers. A nationwide search commenced, while Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, every facet of Rebecca's previous life was monitored diligently. However, Lily never resurfaced. The case took a chilling turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported a peculiar sighting, a visual of Rebecca entering the premises despite being on leave. Security footage confirmed the bizarre occurrence. A doppelganger using a valid ID card had accessed the building, perused through Rebecca's files, and departed. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained in seclusion under protective custody. The chilling realization dawned upon the investigators. Lily hadn't fled, she had executed her plan. Living as Rebecca, she had seamlessly stepped into her life while the genuine Rebecca remained hidden, crafting a new identity in an undisclosed sanctuary. The case remains unsolved to this day. Lily Winters eludes capture, and Rebecca Thorne has forged a new existence in anonymity. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk portraying two strikingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. She scrutinizes their features, seeking the nuances that set them apart. The most haunting aspect Shaw imparts to her protégés is not merely resembling someone else. It's the desire to assume their identity so fervently that one erases their own existence in the process. Our identity is not just a facade we present, it's a treasure we safeguard, often realizing its value only when it's threatened. Story 25. In the quiet neighborhood, a house stood vacant, untouched by life for years. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished, leaving the place in eerie stillness. When new tenants finally crossed the threshold, they encountered a locked bedroom shrouded in mystery. With determined effort, they forced the door open, revealing a space frozen in time. Dust hung heavy in the air, a silent witness to the passage of days unmarked. Yet amidst the untouched room, anomalies beckoned for attention. The bed neatly made, the mirror immaculately clean, and on the desk a solitary candle had burned down to a mere wisp of wax, frozen in time like tears unshed. But there on the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering untold secrets. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths, delved into the notebook's contents as forensic experts combed the room for elusive clues. The script within belonged to Elise Winters, a name tinged with the sorrow of a disappearance unsolved. Her meticulous handwriting danced across the pages, each stroke a silent plea for understanding, until the final entry where the ink bore the weight of fear. "I know he's watching me tonight," the words etched in desperation. "No one believes. If something happens, know it wasn't chance." The detective closed the book, a silent witness to a story unfinished. A scent lingered in the air, dust mingling with a hint of something chemical. The landlord, a specter of guilt, confessed to the unlocked door that should have remained closed. Elise, a paralegal entangled in a web of deceit, had unearthed secrets that powerful men preferred buried. As the investigation unfolded, a trail of breadcrumbs led to hidden truths. A flash drive, a key, documents that painted a damning picture of corruption. Elise's pursuit of justice, a flame flickering in the darkness of deception. The room held its secrets close, a silent witness to a battle fought in shadows. In the end, justice prevailed, though the room remained a silent testament to the price of seeking truth. The house, once a sanctuary, now stood empty, a haunting reminder of a life interrupted. Locals whispered of a presence lingering in the upstairs window, a guardian of secrets long buried. Elise Winters, a name etched in memory, found solace in the echoes of justice served, her voice forever etched in the walls of the room she never truly left. Story 26. Amidst the renovations of their new Victorian-era home, Sarah and Michael stumbled upon a mysterious letter tucked beneath the floorboards, its message cryptic: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Startled by the sudden appearance of 3 sharp raps echoing through the empty house, the couple felt a shiver run down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with weathered hands and a keen eye, was called to the scene. As she carefully retrieved the aged note, the couple's apprehension was palpable. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the charm and history of the old house, but they never anticipated unearthing such an unsettling discovery during their renovation project. The note's faded ink hinted at a hidden past, a web of secrets waiting to be unraveled. Despite background checks revealing nothing amiss about the couple, the house itself bore a complex history. Previously owned by the reclusive Hargrove family, the house had stood empty for years following the passing of its last resident, Margaret Hargrove. Neighbors spoke of Margaret as a solitary yet amiable figure, with no apparent enemies or suspicious circumstances surrounding her death. However, a sense of unease lingered in the air, prompting Detective Reed to delve deeper into the house's enigmatic past. Forensic analysis of the note pointed to a time 2 decades prior, suggesting a sense of urgency and fear in the unknown author. Reed's investigation led her to uncover unsettling truths about Franklin Hargrove, Margaret's late husband, and his dealings with a notorious loan shark known as Victor Mercer. Franklin's descent into paranoia and the looming threat of the collector who came knocking 3 times became central to the unfolding mystery. As Reed pieced together the puzzle through county records, interviews, and Margaret's hidden diaries, a dark truth emerged. Franklin's mounting gambling debts had drawn the wrath of Victor Mercer, leading to a fatal confrontation that had long been concealed within the house's walls. The revelation of a buried skeleton and Mercer's ID hidden beneath the floorboards shed light on the grim events that had transpired. Margaret's diary entries spoke of her haunting fear, the echoes of 3 knocks that tormented her in the wake of the dark secret she harbored. With justice finally served and the case closed, Sarah and Michael made the difficult decision to part ways with the house, unable to shake off the chilling legacy left behind. The abandoned renovations stood as a testament to the unresolved mysteries that continued to haunt the empty halls. Local whispers spoke of ghostly echoes in the night, the spectral sound of 3 distinct knocks that reverberated through the house's silent corridors. The letter, now preserved in evidence storage, served as a chilling reminder of the past. Don't trust the one who knocked. Detective Reed's final report acknowledged the lingering enigma surrounding Margaret's cryptic warning, leaving unanswered questions lingering in the air like wisps of fog on a moonlit night. Story 27. In the world of mysteries that whisper in the shadows, a pocket dial stirred the stillness static and muffled echoes that beckoned from a phone lost in time. The operator hesitated, almost dismissing the faint transmission until a voice shattered the quiet. A woman's urgent whisper sliced through the air, "He's here." And then silence swallowed her words whole, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. The number traced back to an empty house, its walls cloaked in abandonment for years untold. No traces of intrusion marred the quiet solitude within, no signs of disturbance in the dust-laden rooms. Yet in the heart of the desolate kitchen, the phone perched upon the counter, its screen aglow with an otherworldly light. The call had pierced the veil of time just minutes before its discovery. Detective Morgan Reed, a seeker of truths veiled in shadows, pressed the playback button with a steady hand, each repetition of the whisper etching deeper into her mind. The voice that lingered in the air, desperate, fraught with fear, and defying the laws of the possible, haunted her every waking moment. Once the abandoned estate had been the sanctuary of the Sullivan family, until a blaze devoured the west wing, driving them into the arms of a new beginning. The caretaker's monthly visits bore witness to the untouched stillness of the house, a solemn vow that no trespasser had dared disturb its slumber. Background check on the number. Morgan's inquiry pierced the silence, seeking solace in the realm of the unknown. Detective Walsh, her steadfast companion in the dance with shadows, revealed the number's owner, Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had crossed the threshold of mortality 3 years prior in a tragic car accident. Morgan's gaze lingered upon the evidence bag cradling the enigmatic phone, a puzzle defying the laws of reason. A spectral echo from a realm beyond, where the whispers of the departed danced with the living in a macabre waltz of the unseen. The forensic team's meticulous search yielded no answers, no tangible lights in the enigma that shrouded the abandoned house. The dust lay undisturbed save for the spot where the phone perched, a spectral visitor from a bygone era. No fingerprints graced its surface, save for elusive smudges that defied identification. No footprints marked the path to or from the house, as if the caller had emerged from the very fabric of the ethereal. The recording, a siren song of the beyond, became the lodestar of their investigation. 11 seconds of static, of whispered breaths, of 5 words that defied the boundaries of reality. Voice analysis wove a tapestry of uncertainty, confirming the spectral voice as Catherine Sullivan's with a chilling 98% certainty. The timestamp whispered of a convergence of time, the call mirroring the moment of Catherine's passing 3 years prior with eerie precision. Morgan and Walsh, guardians of the unspoken truths that lurked in the shadows, delved into the tapestry of Catherine's life, unraveling the threads of her past. Her father, now wed to a new beginning, bore the mask of bewilderment. Her mother, a solitary figure in a world of memories, crumbled beneath the weight of the spectral voice. "That's my Katie," she murmured, her voice a fragile echo of a mother's love. "She sounds so afraid." Mark Jennings, the shadow that lingered at the edges of Catherine's tale, bore an alibi forged in the crucible of the night, the hospital's embrace, a sanctuary of alibis verified by the vigilant gaze of witnesses and unyielding security footage. Yet the house remained empty, a mausoleum of secrets that defied the laws of reason. The investigation languished in the shadows, a riddle unsolved until a tremulous call shattered the silence. Catherine's mother, a keeper of her daughter's memory, unearthed a relic from the past, a journal that bore witness to the tumult of Catherine's heart. The final entry, a whisper from beyond the grave, etched in ink the specter of fear that loomed over her. "He discovered my intentions. His wrath knows no bounds. If I vanish, it will not be by chance." Morgan, a weaver of truths in the tapestry of shadows, confronted Mark once more, his facade of confidence crumbling in the face of the journal's damning words. "You believe I harmed Katie because of her words on paper. That is not evidence," he retorted, a flicker of defiance in his gaze. "The report of the accident places you at the scene before the arrival of emergency aid," Morgan observed, her voice a blade honed in the fires of truth, "before the sirens pierced the night. I feared for her safety when she failed to appear. I sought her out." Mark's voice wavered, a fragile facade crumbling beneath the weight of scrutiny. The investigators revisited the site of the tragedy, a scar upon the earth erased by time's relentless march. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled a secret buried 20 feet from the crash's epicenter: Catherine's true phone, a relic of her final moments. The device discovered in the house, a mere echo of the past, nestled in her parents' embrace. Forensic scrutiny of the buried phone unveiled a chronicle of terror, deleted messages that spoke of a pursuit that transcended mortal bounds. "Mark has uncovered my plans. His shadow looms behind me on the road." And later, "He drives me to the edge, his fury a tempest that knows no mercy." The medical examiner's gaze turned to the photographs etched in the annals of Catherine's final moments, unveiling a truth veiled in shadows. The injuries bore witness to a struggle beyond the grasp of mere accidents, defensive wounds etched upon her hands, bruises that whispered of a grip that sought to snuff out her light. When Justice's hand reached for Mark, the shadows within him stirred, a specter of guilt that fled into the night. His abode bore witness to a shrine of memories, a tapestry of stolen relics and twisted affections that danced in the shadows of Catherine's memory. Among his hoard lay the tools of deception, a software that wove voices into echoes of the past, a symphony of lies that sought to obscure the truth. As the net of justice closed around him, Mark's words lingered in the air, a confession born of shadows and twisted truths. "She refused to fall silent," he whispered to Morgan, his voice a ghostly echo of a soul laid bare. "Even after I silenced her, her voice haunted me. I needed the world to hear her, to believe she lingered in the shadows. A ghost's voice carries no weight in the court of law." The jury's deliberations wove a tapestry of justice swift and unyielding, a verdict of guilt that pierced the veil of shadows that cloaked Mark's deeds. As the echoes of the verdict faded into the night, Catherine's mother clung to the journal, a beacon of truth in a world shrouded in lies. Justice, a phantom that danced on the edges of perception, had found its mark not through spectral whispers, but through the voice that Catherine had left behind the words that chronicled her fears, her hopes for salvation etched in ink, her final plea for deliverance. The phone from the abandoned house now lies in the evidence locker, a relic of a tale that defied the laws of reason. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, officers swear they hear its phantom ring, a melody that defies the silence that now reigns. Catherine's story endures not as a ghostly fable, but as a testament to the resilience of voices that refuse to be silenced, even in the face of darkness.